And then I put some mindset notes here for y'all. You want to have a practice-oriented mindset, not a results-oriented mindset. I'll show these notes on stream so chat can see. So our mindset here is practice-oriented. We're not really thinking about, in a ladder session, your win-loss doesn't matter. Don't tell your friends about your win-loss in a ladder session. You might have gotten a bunch of people lower than you and you beat them. Good job, no one cares. You might have faced a bunch of people who are way better than you and you put up a good fight but you lost. That might be an even more epic and noble and high skill session for yourself. So don't worry about win-loss. Think about the number of ladder games you're putting in and think about what your practice emphasis is for that session. Is it creep? Is it injects? Is it supply management? Is it minimap awareness? Is it filling Ling vision around at future bases? You just pick one and then you grind so that you know what you're grinding and what you're refining upon. Also, you wouldn't really expect to push yourself up in rank until you have listed out your plan for all 3 matchups. This is something that many people fall in the trap of, is they get stuck just wanting to spam games, and if they lose, they just spam the next game, and they don't really capitalize on what they've learned from their matches. So you want to have a practice-oriented mindset like a student where you are learning from each match that you can. Another note here, your creep spread can always be faster and fuller. You do not lose because of imbalance, you lose because you were outplayed. Just accept this and move on. Your injects can always be tighter and cleaner. Typing at your opponent wastes your own crucial APM, don't. It's super annoying when people act like they want advice from you and they're being chatty in the game. Don't chat at people if you really want to win. Cleaning up your camera management will save you time. We'll look at this in y'all's replays just to see how tight you are jumping from event to event. A lot of players end up seeming faster than others, not because they're actually faster human beings, it's because they're wasting less time dragging their camera around. So they're jumping from event to event and base to base with a lot more efficiency, which ends up netting them more time. So it makes you effectively faster to clean up your camera control and not waste time. You will not move up the ladder unless you're practicing better than your peers. Out of curiosity, around what MMR are you guys?
3.5, 3.6.
4.1, 4.2.
I'm around like 4.3k.
Beautiful.
So like,
y'all are in the thick of it. That's a pretty sweaty bracket, because once you're in that bracket, to move up, you really need to be able to have a better late game than most people. A lot of times in the like 3 to 4K bracket, people will have a pretty good opener, but their ability to follow up that opener is not going to be as good. A lot of people, whenever they attack, they stop producing, they kind of freeze, and they're not taking a base, they're not taking the next upgrade. They have a plan A, and they don't have a plan B. So a big way that you can get an edge on everyone in this bracket is whenever you go for an attack, you have your plan A of, say, I have +1 Roach Ravager. Boom, I'm attacking you with this. You should have a plan B of, if they have plenty of defense for this attack, I have a 4th base to fall back on, I have a Hydra Den, I have an Infestation Pit, and I have +2. So you should have not just the plan to go win, you should have the plan to attack and maybe deal damage, and then you have your plan B to fall back on, so you're not rustled by people who are able to defend your stuff. A lot of Zergs get really tilted by Turtle Terran, Turtle Protoss whenever they're playing passive and low APM. This is a style that's very tilting because you feel as the Zerg, wow, I have 350 APM. How do I lose to a 69 APM Protoss? It feels unfair, but with the way their units work, and if they play a passive style, they can get a really strong army, even with low APM, so you just have to accept that and do your best to counter it and scout it. Okay, another note, cheese is a valid part of the game and you can always do something about it. Question?
Yes, yeah, a little question. Because like that is kind of the reason why I came here. Because man, like I switched to Zerg because I was just sick of PvP. I was like I was around like low Masters 3 on Protoss, and I just got discouraged by the amount of PvP in there. It just felt boring because I don't know, the matchup is you know how it is. So I switched to Zerg. I love the race, but yeah, like what actually kind of got me to stop playing the game is like the effort. It like actually kind of kills the fun from the game for me, because like my biggest opponent really is mech. It just gets me tilted every time I play against it. But yeah, so you say to just accept it because, like you said, we're like the sort of the messiah of StarCraft, right? Especially above Masters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the flip side of it being higher effort for Zerg to win stuff is you do feel more satisfied when you do win. You feel like a god.
that's fucking true, though.
And
Yeah,
it's,
that's true. That's true.
it's very true compared to other video games as well. That's one of the reasons why if you're tilted playing a different game like Overwatch or Dota or Counter-Strike or something, you can just fire up StarCraft and then you get all the glory and you get all the blame. It's a much heavier game in terms of responsibility. So the cool thing is you do feel a lot more accomplished when you do crush a mech Terran, for example. We'll get some notes on mechs just at the end for fun because that is a super tilting format to be in.
Yeah, I think I kind of got addicted to that difficulty. Like on every champion I play in different games, and like on Zerg, it kind of started a little spiral of addiction of hard champions and races, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I would say to just accept it and yeah, okay.
Yeah, accept it, and then the short version of how you frame the versus mech matchup is you soak the map of resources and you basically convert them into banelings at their planetaries. So the joke that I do on stream is I do a baneling scout. It's a secret move versus mech. Don't tell anyone, we'll delete the VOD after this. Okay, so just a note here. Quick tips. This is just because I care about you guys and I know that mech is maybe the most tilting thing that Zergs have to deal with. So we're saying
yeah, I don't really mind Protoss personally, but I think I'm kind of a minority in that case because I came from Protoss, so it's
yeah. Well, you can probably help your teammates then, which is cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So versus mech tips, get a massive drone count. Say 90 plus. Well, 90 to 100. Don't go over 100. That's silly. Okay. Get Bane speed. And run 25 Banes into planetaries while remaxing. Expect to soak the whole map and live there for 35 minutes. This is another thing that I think tilts people on an emotional level, and myself as well. Whenever I'm in a game versus Turtle Mech, I start to question, like, do they like this? Why do they want to play like this? You have to wait 35 minutes to win with this strategy. And this is the thing that you have to accept. Some people do like this. It might seem weird, but I try not to shame people for being into weird stuff. But they do like sitting on a map for 35 minutes with tanks and Thors and 3-3. And they enjoy that. So since they enjoy that, what we want to do is we want to soak the map. We want to accept that they want to live in their little hidey hole. And we want to just bash their 5th base repeatedly and just make sure they're broke as a joke. So there are a lot of mech players that you can definitely figure out. They pretty much have one early game gimmick, and y'all are at the bracket where the player population isn't super high. So if you really get salty about someone's opening, figure out their opening gimmick and how to take 0 damage to it. Almost every mech player that I face in GM does some kind of Hellbat shove or Blue Flame Hellion shove at me. And once you figure that out, a StarCraft player is like a musician in that they can't practice all builds equally. You can just make early roaches and just smash the opening and then drone to basically 60 to 80 right away and then just get Roach Ravager, Lingbane, Corruptor. Roach Ravager, Lingbane, Corruptor I feel like is the easiest high impact army that you can use, that you can trade out freely and remax and not be sad if you lose stuff. Heavy
I know this question might be a little bit subjective based on, you know, how much pressure they put on with their opener, how committed it is.
Mm-hmm.
But to prevent yourself from over making roaches and in turn cutting into your drone count, is there a soft range in terms of how many roaches you're looking for, like 8 to 12 or 8 to 16? Like what's the...
Yeah, make 5 roaches when Warren is done. And then drone to 66. And then if they don't have a third, you're basically just defending with 66 drones of Roach Ravager. But if they do have a third, so I'll say check for a third, then drone your 4th base. One of the most Chad moves that Zergs do now in Legacy of the Void that used to be just instant death in Heart of the Swarm is whenever we're taking our 4th base, and we see our opponent is sitting on 3 bases and playing passive, we just drone the 4th base fully for minerals, like right as it's finishing. There's usually a time window before they get 1-1 and they're starting to hit you, where you can just drone your 4th base all the way for mins, and that gives you the ability to take a 5th base, take a macro hatch, and lose some army and be able to remax it. A really common mistake that I see is people get too much gas. They try to reach for gas at their 4th base, or they only transfer from their main to their 4th, and they're still kind of starving on like 66 to 70 workers, when really you want to be north of 85. 85 plus is going to give you the freedom to take a couple bad fights and back up and still be okay. So that's really big. And then the Corruptor in the composition is really important just to cover you against BC switches. You could play a Hydra Lurker style against mech, but that's kind of like digging in and playing even more of a gross split map against them. The Roach Ravager Lingbang Corruptor can at least trade and fall back, and it's fast moving. Oh, add nidus if you want extra style points.
That mineral emphasis can't be overstated. Every coaching session I've seen, whether personally or just observing, for platinum, diamond, low masters, is always that 4th base gas from all races, and you end up with that 3K gas float and sub 1K minerals, and you can't remax as any race. So
yeah, it's such a waste. It's one of the really funny bio traditions too. Is you see a bio player running at you and they have 2K gas and they're not making medivacs. Another nice note here versus mech, be grateful that they can't play bio for shit.
I remember, if I may, of course, I remember like a little tournament I played in. There was like a Russian mech guy, like 4.6 star. I was like barely 3.9k as on Zerg. He played mech, I defeated him, but like the moment he came, he just went bio, I lost immediately, like the first Hellions, That was pretty.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point you made actually. Because bio is like ultimately the better.
There's a mech player on NA ladder who I play against sometimes, and I said something like, "Oh, this guy's mech is so much stronger than his bio," and I don't know if he heard me say that, but he tries to play bio against me all the time, and it's really cute because it's like all one huge clump of Marine Marauder Medivac, and it never drops me. It just like walks at me like it's a bunch of tanks stuck in a Marauder's body. It takes a lot of work to manage multiple control groups and stuff, so
Yes.
Mech is much more easy to wield when it comes to unit management. You can F2 and be a mech player, whereas you can't F2 and be a good bio player. It just doesn't really work that way. You want to split it up into lots of small fights and skirmishes and that kind of stuff. So cool. We got some versus mech tips. Yeah, go ahead.
Like the biggest reason I lose games against mech was like random, like those so like fucking like 10 or like even 20 Hellion runbys just at my bases. Like they kill like 16 drones immediately, and they don't even lose the Hellions sometimes because like I put spores there, spines, but they just don't kill it fast enough. They can even go like even if it's late game and they go into Hellbats, they change into Hellbats, they can even kill my bases and like roaches I send there to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I just need a second or a third army control group to deal with this, or
no, just 2 spines per base, because with the amount of money that you're talking about, if they trade out the Hellions, they're spending more money in minerals than you are for the drones at the base.
I mean, yeah, but they don't. Do they really care about minerals as a mech player? I think you're kind of gas starved.
They do. Right. Eventually they do. In the short term, they do not. But in the long term, for starvation, they do. There have been a lot of matches that I play where if you're delaying their 5th base for a really long time, they end up running out of minerals before they run out of gas because they can't afford missile turrets and they can't afford their command centers. So the minerals, if they get all the orbitals up, then they don't care about minerals. But if you make sure that their orbital count is limited, if they're throwing Hellions at you, then that's something that is a bad trade for them at a point. 2 spines per mineral line, just in the mineral line, is usually enough to buy time. And then another just general rule about static defense. Static defense is just defensible time. It's not actually something that's meant to make you bulletproof against Hellions, because you're right, if they send 12 Blue Flame Hellions, you're not going to save your drones with 2 spines. But at the same time, that was a huge supply investment, so I would raise the question of what other army do they have and what is it doing? Because that was a big throw for them, and they no longer have those Hellbats to protect their tanks and stuff against Lings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One question, just the Google Doc. It is closed, I think, so we can't.
You have to
get
request
it.
access, yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can give you a link with
You want to-
access. Oh, it's restricted. There we go. Anyone with the link.
yeah.
I'm going to give you a fresh link. I'll put it in the chat again.
And then there's another person in the audience, Raki. I don't know if he wants to come in and talk also.
He's traitor.
Hey, he's raising his hand.
I have invited him.
Okay, good. Cool, it works.
All right.
I have a question about the battle mech and Turtle Terran.
Uh-huh.
I know the mindset for when you're playing a Zerg versus Turtle Protoss is a lot that he who attacks kind of loses because you have to get into all the static defense and such. But that kind of idea is not as much established for Zerg versus Terran. Do you think it's pretty much the same, or is the same kind of mindset for Zerg versus Terran if it's a defensive battle mech?
So the defensive battle mech, I would say, is not good in the sense that it gives you the space to max out. And the thing that really fucks up battle mech is if you mix in upgraded Ling Bane with your Roach Ravager. If you're just playing Roach Ravager, the Cyclones are going to be trading really well, but them locking on to Lings is pretty shitty for their value. And Lings are also much faster in their ability to run out and get a flank on the target. So one of the things that I do in terms of my like unit composition that I'm looking for is I ask, is the mech player more tank based or more Cyclone based? And then if they're more if tank, go Roach Rav heavy. If Cyclone, go Ling Bane heavy, but still Roach Rav. Yeah, the Ling Bane just gives you more of an option to surround and flank. Cyclones are very flimsy, but it's really hard for Roaches to close the gap. Lings, they don't have that problem. And if they're going Cyclones, you want to look at their ratio of Hellion to Cyclones. You know how many Banes you need to mix in. Because if they don't have very many Hellions, which happens pretty often, and they have a lot of Cyclones, you can just get a shitload of Lings. And one of the ways that you can really crank that out is add 1 to 2 macro hatches in the main. Do you guys ever do 2 macro hatch in the main?
Yes.
Yeah, 1 extra, usually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try 2 sometimes. If you're feeling ballsy and you're against a very turtley player, it just gives you so much larva income over time, especially against the 35-minute rest and sit kind of players. Double macro hatch is really big. I picked that up from Dark. There are a lot of stuffy Zerg coaches who are like, you should just inject better. And Dark is like, watch me take hatches. Okay.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, it also allows you to like inject 3 hatcheries on like 1 camera hotkey, right? That's also pretty
Hell yeah.
But just a follow-up question to that: how do you can evaluate being offensive of Zerg if you choose your composition? Because I feel a lot of times when Terran is very turtly and has a lot of mech, you just kind of bleed supply all the time. So you just lose so much minerals, and that's kind of their main goal. So I'm just curious how you pick your battles and kind of get value from them, even though you have a good composition.
Yeah, the main thing that you have to be really careful for is, I put this note here, 25 Banes. You have to be careful about, it's kind of like in poker, your bet sizing. You want to be mindful of the trades that you're taking. Are these trades going well for me? Where am I taking these trades, and what am I trading into? Like, what do I want to use to bust into their territory? Sun Tzu said if he prepares to the front, his rear will be weak, and if to the right, his left will be weak. And if he prepares everywhere, he'll be weak everywhere, in the sense that you can't evenly distribute your army and be strong in every place at the same time. Normally, they want you to attack from a certain angle, and they're prepared for that angle. So if you attack there, that's your worst trade on the map. But there are usually some openings in their bases, and if you don't know what they are during the game, you can always look at it after in the replay. Almost every mech player is going to have some big gaps, and one of the main ones that you need to punish is nidusing the main. Nidusing a mech Terran's main is one of the most ugly and nasty things that can happen to them, and they get very upset. So always have that as an option. Even if you don't like land the nidus in the main, the psychology power of the nidus network and the sound that it makes in their ears, it gives a level of fear that means that they have to be concerned about their main base the entire time. If you don't have a nidus, they know that your squishy Zerg stuff is going to be in front of them, and they can go out and roast and toast and blast the shit out of you. But if you have a nidus and they go out and attack you, they have to accept that they may get a shitload of Zerg stuff that just goes on their production all of a sudden. And they have to dedicate defensive tanks if they want to make sure that doesn't happen. So nidus is probably the biggest punishment mechanism you can add. And then I would recommend doing what's called a psychology nidus at least once or twice. Psychology nidus is when you just put it on the map at one of their future bases. You make the sound, you make them concerned. They're thinking about swarm hosts coming over there. They're wondering like why you're nidusing over there. It raises a bunch of questions for them. And that's a big part of just applying pressure to your opponent is you want to make sure they're worried and they feel unsafe. So mix
I think it also burns scans, because if they don't see it in their main, then they might start scanning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
I've got a question just kind of relating back to your Viper comment in the Google Docs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying make 2 to 3 Vipers, and I agree with that. I commonly see, for example, ZvP and specifically ZvT versus mech, where both Serral, Raynor, or other top Zergs are, the second that hive is done, they're prioritizing the Vipers to whether it be Poe Colossus, Blinding Cloud tanks, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. My question is, when it's versus ZvT Bio, is that the one exception where you should still be prioritizing your gas on 3-3 upgrades plus Adrenal prior to the Viper, or is the Viper still deemed more valuable to Harabomb, Medivacs, etc. over 3-3?
3-3. For sure.
3-3 for bio, yeah, because you need to keep up with their upgrades, right? So
yeah, it's faster tempo doing that. The only time I would see making a Viper or two would be good is if they were doing something like a 60 worker 3 base Marine tank all in, where they don't take a fourth and they're betting everything on their 2-2 tank timing. And maybe a Blinding Cloud or two could turn the tide for that, but that would be the only case. In almost every other case, there are going to be, if there are mines in the mix, then Vipers suck. If it's like a bunch of Doom drops all over the place, Vipers are kind of awkward there. So yeah, I would say 3-3 in a general, definitely prioritize over Vipers.
And then, as a rule of thumb, that is correct, right? Versus mech and versus any Protoss, the Vipers are always prioritized over +3 and Adrenal. Is that a decent rule of thumb, or is it more situational than that?
It's more situational than that, I think, because the 3-3 upgrades, it can give you a really nice power spike that you can use, whereas the Vipers, they give you an engagement edge that you can have, but it doesn't increase the value of all of your units in the same way that the upgrades do. So I would say if they're being really passive, I would just prioritize upgrades. To me, it feels a lot stronger to get those.
Okay, that's a good rule of thumb. So if they're aggressive Vipers, if they're defensive, and you feel that you have time to squeeze in the upgrades and then go to Vipers, then get upgrades first.
Yeah, against Protoss, the only time I'm thinking Vipers before +3 upgrades is if they're playing like a 60 to 66 worker Stalker Sentry Colossus kind of army, where abducting those Colossi is really high value.
Right.
But if they have a bunch of like medium units like Charge Lot Archon Immortal, having Vipers doesn't really help you that much. So I would prefer upgrades there.
For sure. Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Who wants to be our first victim and share a replay? If we don't have any questions for now.
I can probably then. I think I'm maybe lowest, so we can like go from low.
Do you guys have a channel on the EU server that I can join?
Should we go into DeVoid 1? Is it called like that for our tournaments?
How is it spelled?
Is it 01? /
It's DeVoid 1, just.
I see Set, Sugar Colton, Daryl in here. Zergs
There we go.
assemble. Nice. Okay, I'm inviting people. So I will pass you party leader, and then you will watch with others, and then once we get into the lobby, you will right-click me and promote to lobby host so I can pause and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Just trying to invite everybody. Fuck Vowels, nice name.
You're talking about avoid texting to your opponents. I realize I do this to myself because some people don't get the name, or they pretend to not get the name to get me to explain it again, whether it's intentional or not. So
Just have it on copy paste.
Yeah.
yeah, they're responsive copy paste. Yeah.
Make macro.
Make a
Set, are you
macro
in-
for it.
Are you in this group
With the
set?
Wikipedia link.
Let's see, someone's missing.
Okay, I think I can stream my StarCraft.
I think Serpent is AFK.
Yeah, he's on his phone, right? So I don't know.
I'm traveling. I can't join
Yeah.
my StarCraft.
Neuro, this is apropos to absolutely nothing that we're talking about, but there must be an entire added psychology at, whether it be low or mid GM level and above, where because the pool is so small relative to, let's say, Masters and below, you're playing a lot of the same people all the time. And
Yes.
I'm wondering, like you're saying earlier, they can't practice all builds, but because of their skill level and their time investment in the game, they are going to have a wider array. So that kind of brings on two streams. Either they are very well rehearsed with specific builds and they don't deviate, or they're betting on you assuming that they're going to do, their typical thing and then pivot and switch to try to catch you off guard. There must be a whole psychological mindfuckery to that.
Yeah, my first GM push, I actually had a Excel spreadsheet where I wrote down people's builds. It was basically kind of like a hit list of what people are doing. And the thing that I noticed was when people do pivot off of their main style, it sucks. It's just so clumsy that it's not threatening to me at all. So if I'm against a mech player, I'm not even going to think about them playing bio. And if they beat me with bio, I will update my document. So
Right.
It's they can pivot somewhat, but if your macro style is really solid and strong, then you should be able to just make some small adjustments to counter their style and not really be scared about other stuff. Same thing goes with like a Protoss who's a cannon rusher. They're going to be super, super good at cannon rushing. They're going to know where to place the buildings. They're going to know all these different cases of that early game shenanigan, but they couldn't play a standard macro game to save their life at their bracket. So if you adjust your build, maybe you just go 16 pool or something to the start, that really makes the matches a lot easier on yourself. Same thing with the opposite case where you're against a macro Protoss and they try to mix in a cannon rush. It's usually going to be pretty half-assed.
Right.
A little question also about like changing build orders and stuff. Do you actually think, because I've kind of grown to believe that like each rank kind of has a different playstyle to it, and like when I was climbing, I was basically going like up from like 3.2k to where I am now, around like 4 something k. And like I needed to change my playstyle a lot because like in 3.6, like when I was still learning the race, like there was a lot of bullshittery going on, like random void ray transitions, banshees, stuff like that. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong though, that playing just macro, just standard, is the best thing to against that, because it can lead to just getting tilted. And do you think you should just go with this like fuckery and join them, just do something aggressive yourself, and then when you get to the like elo or more standard, then you can start playing macro games?
Specifically, the two things that you mentioned both require higher than usual queen counts. So I think one of the things that we mean by playing strong macro is having a minimum of 7 queens as fast as possible and good overseer timing for yourself, because if you have those things, then you should be pretty safe against Banshee builds, Void Ray builds, that kind of stuff. And you can oftentimes punish them with simple things like I have melee lings, so now you can't take bases, or I'm able to drone my 4th base. Because Void Rays and Banshees, they're very situational in the damage they can deal to us, so we don't really need to adjust our plan that much. It just ends up setting back their power spikes for having a strong normal army. It does feel really, really stupid, and this is a point of compassion on yourselves. Whenever you do get bamboozled, I have been bamboozled by players who, maybe they're a really good bio player. I lost to a guy who went for triple port Banshee against me on Golden Aura, and I felt really dumb. But that happens sometimes. If they've invested a lot of matches in playing a certain way, and they mix in a really unorthodox build that requires a bit of a different defense, it will catch you off guard. You can get a little bit tilted by that, but oftentimes you'll end up losing because you cut corners somewhere. So the corners that I cut were, I droned my 4th base really early. I only had 5 queens, and I skipped my spores because they had played bio against me most of the time. So you always want to go into your replay after that happens and try to focus on what was my macro mistake. Because let's not pretend that our macro is clean. Everyone's macro can improve a lot. We have Cyril as an example of, if your macro is rock solid, you can beat anybody, but it's very, very difficult to macro as a Zerg with all the different things that can happen. And today we're focusing mainly on ZvP, which is definitely the most thinking matchup for Zergs. There are so many different ways that Protoss can play out the match. It feels very different from ZvP and ZvT, because, ZvZ and ZvT. ZvZ is just stabbing each other until someone dies, makes sense. ZvT, maybe they go bio, maybe they go mech, but in both cases, they're usually playing a ground-based army. The only weird one is battlecruiser games. But then against Protoss, you can be cannon rushed early, you can be Prism all-in, they can have proxy gateway zealots, they can go mass oracles, they can go for a 2-base Tempest build, they can go carriers, they can go Colossi, they can go disruptor drops. It just feels like there's so much random shit that can go on. So the points of stability that we have for ourselves are reaching our convergence point, 4 hatches, inject all of them, 80 drones, upgrades running, really running lots of Lings and Banes around their probe lines and trying to deal damage to them, because the probe is really the best spot for us to deal damage. I don't know if you've tried +2 melee Banes against Protoss, but it's super good. They've had to nerf it a bunch. But it's a very weird matchup, and I'm pretty excited to see what people at your bracket are doing and how to get ahead. Because it's a very silly matchup, but once you get the hang of it, I think you'll feel really strong. The most important read that we'll be looking at is what their Cybercore is doing early on. Let's look at some.
There's one question I've got before we go into the replays that I'm hoping will potentially limit the amount of talking you have to do, since we are all Zerg here, and it just has to do with the Zerg rhythm. Mm-hmm. So obviously, Zerg rhythm, the whole systematically every 29-30 seconds you should be doing something to the effect of inject, spend larva, OVs, creep spread, scout, check army, check upgrades, whatever. And I know that's going to change a little bit. There's a little bit of personal preference there. But my question is, whatever your personal preference is, do you find that there are certain, whether it be versus a race or certain compositions, where you find yourself changing the order of that Zerg rhythm? And if so, what's causing that change?
Yes, small adjustments that come to mind for that. I would call that your macro cycle priorities.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is usually the same. I would normally say that it's 1 injects, 2 supply, 3 spend larva, and then 4 creep, and 5 scout. Kind of in that order. One of the things that you might shift is against Protoss and Terran, I like to creep tumor with my queen at the natural first, just to get the creep over to my 3rd and start moving it forward on the map. But if they go for the double barracks in the wall Reaper build, they will kill the creep tumor. So that's an example of, I cannot defend the creep tumor, so I will inject, even though I don't want to inject as much, but I have to deal with that. Another example would be maybe sometimes you put your supply a little bit higher, where you see an attack is coming in and you make 3 overlords, just to make sure that you can make units throughout the push. There are cases where maybe you want to scout, but most of the time I would say at your bracket, scouting is oftentimes going to confuse you because you're going to see people doing stuff that's suboptimal. And it can sometimes give you a good read, like if you see they're going air or something, that's fantastic. But a lot of times you'll be overthinking what they're doing when you could just simply drone and not care about what they're doing and just exist as an ahead Zerg on the map.
Right. I do notice as a follow-up question, kind of tied into this, is there's a lot of pros. It almost seems to be like 50-50 from my observations, that after inject, there's a bunch of people that want to spend larva and then make OVs with the natural larva that comes out, versus the other school of thought where, and this is the one I subscribe to as well, where you go OVs first. That way, if you're ever in a panic situation, especially for the 5k below players, you're not accidentally spending all of your larva on army into a hard supply block. So I don't know, maybe this is a skill thing where as you have more control and more awareness and you're less panicked, that you can go spend larva and then OVs. But I also find with people having their repeat rate so high, even if they intend to save some larva for their OVs, they end up just smashing Zerglings or roaches, and next thing you know, oh shit, I've spent every larva on army and there's nothing left over. So
yeah, for sure. I think some of the things you're pointing to there was between the inject larva and the natural hatchery larva. The inject larva is when you get clumps of 3, and that's, I think, the clumps that you want to think about. Are these drones or are these fighting units? And then the larva drip that you get between that is when you're getting those overlords and filling vision around your bases. At least in the early game, that's how I usually navigate that.
Okay, 10-4.
Cool. Okay, who is our first victim and what is your name in game?
System.
Okay.
It is me.
System. You're a party leader. You can watch with others and then promote me to lobby host.
Yes. So I just played this game with another DeVoid comrade. He is around 4k and I'm 3.5. Because I just wanted like something that is not, so I can go to the mid game. So because I feel like in my rank it's just one push and then you die kind of sometimes.
I think Terran Lover needs to ready up.
But I have a hard time to like control like Lurker, Viper, and an army to go synchronized without the Viper just falling and dying sometimes, or unborrow and borrow in the right spots and that kind of stuff, and also expanding when I should be doing.
Gotcha.
Terran Lover, are you here? Is he in the...
I'm inviting to speak. I don't know if they disconnected or reconnected. We can also drop him and pick him back up.
For Europe, you're slacking.
What? Am I Diamond 3 in Europe? I haven't played EU.
You're ranking in the last season. So.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe drop and pick him up on the next one.
Yeah.
That works. Okay. You have party leader system, so you can do that.
Okay.
Cool. Then load again. Yeah, I'm 5.1 on NA right now. The main things that I'm dying to probably Protoss, who are higher MMR than me, killing me with adepts. I recently faced Nightmare, who's a GSL Protoss doing that.
Oh my god, yeah, he's on fire right now.
And Pig casted the game, and he gave me some coaching tips after it, so you get some secondhand wisdom here. All right, yeah. ZvP, let's see what we got. By the way, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, pointing out mistakes, so I know sometimes you feel on the spot if it's pointed out, but it'll help you grow, so.
It's all good.
That's what we signed up for.
Hard-skinned. So.
Thick-skinned, good.
Thick-skinned, yeah.
He's got the chitinous plating.
Yes.
I'm going to just point out all the little macro mistakes too, and then I'll write them down. So you don't need to memorize everything as we're going. And I have, I'll put out specific notes for each of you. Okay, first mistake. 16 hatch.
Oh yeah, this is should be a 16 hatch, but it was a mistake.
Okay.
It was supposed to. I was thinking of like just redoing this because it was a custom game. But I was just like, let's just focus on the mid game. So, or like early to mid.
Just a reminder here for you. I don't know how often Protoss block your natural for everyone, but what I do is I send the drone at 145 minerals, 16 supply, send drone directly to third. And I would use the line third on this map just because it's a bit closer by ground rush.
Yeah, I was questioning it, but yeah.
Yeah, and then at 270 minerals, your SCV, or sorry, your drone should be about here, like right at the opening of the wall. And if you don't see a probe, you circle back and just take your natural. So that's like the most optimal way to open, where the probe block doesn't mess you up because you still get your 16 hatch at a good time here, even if it shows up. So I'm saying 270 minerals, turn back, and take nat if no probe. Cool. Okay. We see the opening. Great. Okay, the probe is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is good.
Yeah, there's not so much like mineral harass or.
Yeah.
Well, it should be like being scaring like my second base, like cannon rush and stuff. I know this player never like cannon rushes, so. But I still want to like have the overlord just for practice and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Should there be a drone transfer to the natural at the third, so that if adepts come across, they cannot pick up on the transferring drones as they're rallied to the base?
Yeah, the way that you're navigating this setup here is this drone transfer to the third. We'll just call this the third that he has as his second base. These workers transfer. One thing that I want all of you to memorize and really try to be in the good routine of doing is this first queen that injects in the main base, she injects, and that larva timer goes across, and when those three hit the ground, they become drones and they go back into the gas. This is something that I picked up from Cyril, and it is just so elegant and efficient, and it gets around that adept problem of you do have an opening right here, where if they send two adepts and you're transferring drones, they will die. So you have a bit of a time window until the first adept gets there. I'll show you what to do with your lings to deal with that. But the inject the main and then those three larvae going into the extractor is something that you can do in every matchup. It's just really clean Zerg macro.
Oh, cool. Because I never know like when to take my first gas, like go back to my gas.
Yeah. Okay. So you got your base here. You inject your third. You inject your main. That's correct. What is the very next unit you should build?
Drones, maybe one. There should be like 1 to 2 adepts coming. Just like 6 or 1 adept first, right? So I guess 4 links is good, but just drones, and queens.
Yep. You need 1 queen at the third base.
Okay.
That way you'll have Oracle defense ready to go at the base that's closest to where the Oracle would go. And then you want to make an Overlord at 33, always. And then you want to make another 2 to 4 lings in the main. And this is another way that you're getting around the drone transfer problem. And your lings can't be in the third base and the main at the same time. So you have 4 lings in the main. I put them on a different hotkey. So you have your 4 lings on 1. You could put your other lings in the main base on 4, for example, just one of your open keys, wherever that is, so that if they're trying to juke you with the shade, you have 4 lings and 2 queens at your third, and you have 1 queen and 4 lings in your main. I don't know how aggressively they're going to pressure you with that, but... Okay, and your lings here should always just be sitting at the third.
Yeah.
So first 4 lings sitting at natural or third if you're getting blocked. And then typing up next. So you get third queen at forward base, 4 more lings in main on separate key. And then first inject falls in main and goes into extractor as drones. Cool. Let's see what happens. 33 Overlord is one of the most common ones that we mess up because the Adept is hitting us at that time.
Oh yeah.
So get acquainted with that. One thing that can help you with it is to name your Overlords. They can kind of get amorphous and you forget about them and stuff. But if you're like, hey, where's Francisco? Like, we need his supply. Makes it a little bit easier on yourself. So you're...
I think I did a double. I was like, shit, this 36 again.
Yeah, you should make a 33 Overlord and a 36 Overlord. I put it in the build notes too that you can check. Yep. And then this would be the time when you need to decide if you're making a spore or not. You took gas now? Like a second gas, or you mean you refilled gas?
I refilled gas.
Okay, that's good. 330 is when you do that.
Neuro, in this meta, is it sacrilegious to have a second Overlord across the map? Or is it, now that the Void Ray meta has died off, is it acceptable again to have, you know, your first and second OV kind of over there?
It's fine. I don't do it, but it's not that bad. Worst case, so you know that they're going
I never
there.
did it before, but then the first Overlord always die, and then I don't have any scouting. It like feels so bad. Then I just have to scout the wall and stuff.
Okay, so we've been supply blocked a bit here. Now we're seeing we have a problem of not knowing what our gas plan is.
Yeah.
Your ling speed, great. You figured it out. After your ling speed, I would say the main branch that I go for is, am I getting +1 melee next or am I getting lair next? And that depends on, am I playing against oracles into gateway units in a third, or am I playing against some kind of ground-based shove? If it's a ground shove, we play roaches. If it's oracles into a third base, we play melee lings. So I would say at around at 70 gas, you have after ling speed, decide on roach versus melee, and then just go for one of those, and then get lair right after melee.
So what makes the melee upgrade so good? Like,
so melee +2
prioritized.
is one of the most common causes of night terrors for Protoss mains.
For the Banelings?
Entire probe lines will vanish in less than a second, and many people have switched off of StarCraft into Age of Empires because of this amount of damage. It's not funny. It's a problem. Yeah, melee 2 Banes are horrifying.
Okay.
I find even the melee just to help defend the Oracle Stalker push, mid-game push at the third is also really helpful.
I feel like in my rank, no one does the Blink Stalker. I feel like, I think it comes like in the 4K and above.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
We're pausing for 1 second. I need to show you guys just a quick clip kind of articulating the importance of Banelings in the matchup. So this is on stream. I'm going to link it in the chat just in case people don't have my stream open.
Let's see.
Okay, here's the chat. Oh, there it is. There you
Don't have your stream open. That's our default browser.
That's my homepage. Hell yeah.
Homepage.
Okay.
Yeah? Dude, we have so much shit to go! Holy
See? +2 Banes. +2 melee Banes. You will be the terror of Protoss. Shout out to Gemini for making that video. He's a Protoss player. So he made that as a Protoss player. That's how it feels.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then if they do crazy walls, you can drop them. Just to really quickly mechanically talk about the easiest way to set up a Bane drop, which is extra good in ZvP. So I'll just put this in the ZvP notes. Bane drop micro plan. Okay. Make one Overlord rallied to the drop setup zone. Make 2 larvae of Lings to the drop setup zone. Start Overlord speed. Morph Overlord. Morph Lings into Banes. So the reason I do it this way is because you don't have anything that you need to steal out of your army control group. You don't need to do anything weird like that. You're just setting the units. The good drop spots here, I would say you could find one right here.
Yeah.
This little cliff. This little ling is at a pretty good spot for one. So if you just rally one overlord and then 2 larvae of lings there, then you can just morph all the units whenever they get to that spot and then micro the drop. Makes it super easy on yourself. Cool. So the main thing this game in terms of your mistakes overall is supply management.
Yeah.
Try to get, let's say 5 minute 4th base at the latest.
Can I jump in just for a quick sec, Neuro? With that Bane drop thing, what's your opinion now on 4 Banelings in the Overlord versus 3 Banes and a Zergling to clean up any red hit point probes?
3 Banes and 2 Lings, it's totally fine if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good too. Oh my gosh, the wall discipline. Okay, this is one of your sacred duties as Zerg players. This happens all the time. Whenever you play against Protoss and you look at the replays, I want you to think about how many times the wall is open. Because you can just yeet 50 lings into the main in a lot of games, even against Masters and GM Protoss, and it is wide open.
I was trying.
You're trying.
Potential, but
You can't do it right now because they're on 2 bases, so they only need to defend 1 spot. So it's too obvious right now. But when they have 4 bases, it usually opens up. And look at the opponent's control groups. What's their army hotkey?
he has F2.
That's correct.
So, yeah. So.
Can you hold position a unit in the wall if you use F2?
Nope.
Okay. Put that in your notes.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you see a base like this and it's got 9 of 16, that's sad. Fix it. Anytime you see 11 out of 16, that's sad. Fix it. You should have 16. Like, look at this. 18 of 16. Oh my god, that's business right there. I like this base. Cool. So you should be...
I think I was doing so micro, and I was like so happy that I canceled his 3rd, and I was like, alright. I'm getting excited and stuff. And then I forgot, I think, of like macroing and like going back.
Yeah, well you did...
I saw the Colossus, so I was thinking about Viper, because I'm trying to like improve my Viper control and all that. Mm-hmm. So that's where my mind was going.
Yep, so get 70 drones in 4th before teching past Roach. You can't actually afford Hive Tech with 46 workers, so you want to make sure you have 66 to 70 as you're getting into your Hive, and then once your Hive is up, you want to get to like 85 or so. But I would say once you killed their 3rd, that was super good for you. If you could get to 66 workers and just play Roach Ravager +1, you win the game. Imagine 180 supply that you have, 66 of it is in drones, the rest of it is in Roach Ravager. This army is like an old stick that's dry. It's about to snap in half. It's a tiny army that can do nothing to Roach Ravager. Here you have mostly Ling Ravager, which is still, you have a supply lead, but you don't need to attack right now. And if you get to 180 supply, that's your sweet spot. I'm putting this in general notes here for ZvP. One of the best times to trade is at 170 supply. That's when Zerg tends to have a power spike against Protoss. Can anyone tell me why Protoss has so many goddamn 2-base all-ins that are good?
I think Zerg's power spike is kind of 3-base saturation, so they're kind of hitting at that anti-timing, would be my 2 cents.
That's a good guess. Any other guesses?
Well, you mean the diversity?
Why they have so many good 2-base all-ins.
Ah, good.
The first answer was kind of on the right track, but it didn't really explain it from the Protoss perspective. The reason is Chrono Boost is fucking strong. And Protoss, if they have 2 Nexus and they're Chrono Boosting workers, they will hit 2-base saturation faster than we do. Which means that they can just get there, stop making workers, and all-in us. And if we overdrone, we die. So they have so many different 2-base all-ins because they're leveraging their Chrono Boost power spike. So if you can get to 3 base saturation, like was mentioned, you can be very strong, and that edge for them falls off a little bit, and they have more of an even game on their hands because you have bases that are injected. Now your economy is getting up there.
Speaking of saturation, just if you were to go back a minute, I'm not asking you to actually go back in the replay, but about a minute ago, we were on 6 gas and about 9 workers on the 3rd. Can we kind of say as a rule of thumb that we should only be going to 6 gas prior to 3 base mineral saturation if we're going mutas, and if it's anything other than mutas, we want 3 mineral lines first prior to the 5th and 6th gas geysers?
You want 3 bases mineral before you get your 3rd gas.
Before the 3rd gas, okay.
Before the 3rd gas, dude. You need so many drones and queens. Like, we're under-queened right now. We would also have more lings if we had more minerals. We would also be able to have afforded an earlier macro hatch if we had more minerals. Yeah, I would say sometimes you go 3 gas for like roaches and you're going maybe 50 drones of roach and you're fighting a 2 base all in. In that case, I would say it's forgivable to have the 3rd gas. But if you have 4 plus gas before you have 3 base mineral, you're going to be floating gas and it's going to be ugly.
Got it. That's a good adjustment, yeah. Only the 3rd gas if you're being all in and you need, let's say, Ravagers to break force fields or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Oh no. We're playing Roach Hydra against Disruptors. So their army is, this is what I would call slow toss, in the sense that they're only playing with 1 clump of stuff and they're making all the big spicy fun units. They're really good, but they're not microable and fast. It's all based on the power of their clump. They're trying to make a stronger clump than your clump. So what you need to do here, your army is stronger than theirs, technically. But if you're fighting in a narrow choke, you're going to have a really hard time microing stuff. So you need to do what's called the Moses. And I'm not still practicing Christianity, but in the Bible, Moses was leading his people out of Egypt, and the Egyptian army was going to chase them down, and then the 2 sides of the Red Sea smashed them, and they were able to escape. So you need to have half of your shit here and half of your shit here. And when they walk here, you kill them. But if you have all your stuff in 1 clump, it's going to hurt very bad.
Yeah, because I have Vipers now, so I was thinking about just like a dot, like making it smaller. So I don't know. I know that you're like supposed to like head for lurk and stuff.
Yeah, Roach Ravager +1 would actually do better against this than Hydra, but we're still making it work a little bit.
Yeah.
And then don't be afraid to mix in Adrenalings. Adrenalings are incredibly strong. Just mixing in your links in the composition throughout the game means you have more gas for other stuff too. Okay. So keep those Evo chambers working, get the Adrenal upgrade. As a fun fact, Adrenal Glands got buffed. It used to give Lings 18% additional attack speed. And I want you to hover over the spawning pool. How much does it give now? 40% attack speed. Dang. So I was at the team house with Violet. I don't know if you remember him. He was a Zerg pro.
Yeah.
Piano hands.
He was laughing so hard whenever they put this in. He was like, bro, they did not just make Adrenal Glands 40% attack speed increase. That's so busted. And he was like laughing his ass off that it was that strong. But no one really talked about that change from HOTS to Legacy of the Void, but Ling's got an insane buff.
Cool.
It's crazy good. So just clicking that in, mixing in some Lings, mixing in a Baneness too.
Yeah. I'm so afraid of like the storms and all the splash, and it's like he just dies in 1 hit, and it's like
Ultras really destroy
especially
this
on
army
the new
too.
map, I feel. Yeah.
Do any of you play Ultras against Protoss?
Yes, recently after oh god, what's his name? Got me on it. He's not a pro, but he's a streamer. Anyways, yeah, Lingbane into Ultra Corruptor. What the hell is his name?
Snake Slammer.
Uko.
Nice. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
Ultras are extremely strong. They're also, let's look at their army here. So Ultras are a hard counter to Colossi. They're pretty good against Stalkers. They trade well against Archons. They're a super hard counter to High Templar. So this army that they have would just die to 8 Ultras, probably. They have 1 Immortal in the mix. With Ultras, you don't always stay on them, like if they do something silly like triple Robo in response to it and they just spam Immortals. But it's a very good unit. You need to make sure you have good ground upgrades for it, though, like good melee, good carapace.
Assuming you're not playing the... Go ahead. You go ahead.
How long is this coaching session? I'm just wondering if we were gonna go through all of them.
Yeah, we're going through everyone.
Okay. Just wondering if there was a time limit or something.
Like 3 hours-ish.
Okay.
If you're not playing the Ling Bane or Ling into Ultra, and you're opening roaches, maybe because you're forced to, when would you say is the appropriate time to add on the second Evo chamber? Again, kind of subjective, but is there a general
After +2
plan
melee.
that you have?
After +2 melee.
After +2 melee. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a really good timing to practice for Roach versus Roach in ZvZ as well. After you get your +2 range attack, throw down another Evo, and then get Carapace, and they end up finishing at the same time. So you end up getting a +2/+1 power spike. It's very
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing an insanely good job of like being in your opponent's face, using different control groups. The thing that would make this really horrifying for your opponent is if this Overlord right here gave vision for a Nidus in the main. Because the players at your bracket, they all want to play what I call a little kid soccer game, where they follow around the one moment of action that's happening, and it kind of moves back and forth on the map. But every kid is all in the same clump. They don't stay in their zones. They all just huddle around the ball the whole time. So that's what a lot of Diamond and Masters games end up being, is I make an army, you make an army, and we just smash our armies together until someone ends up falling over. When what you can do is you could viciously backstab this player. I'm looking at your 4 lurkers on the map. If you shove the lurkers at their base, it's going to kind of be bad because they have Archons, they have cannons, they have Immortals. But if you just put them at a different base, like you could Nidus them here, and that would suck. You could Nidus them in the main. Violet told me 4 lurkers plus 20 lings and a Nidus, and Protoss is going to be very sad.
4 lurkers and what?
What?
Was there anything more? Or just 4 lurkers?
4 lurkers, 20 lings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neuro, that was really great fatherly advice with the whole soccer reference. You have a couple of kids that we don't know about that you want to share on stream? Pulling a Drake on us.
He has the
So
soccer
is
dad
there
listening.
like a good thumb of rule of when to put down the Nidus? Like
After you
when
have
you have lurkers,
85
like,
drones,
yeah,
then a 5th base.
just take all the goods.
Yeah, because that way it's a macro Nidus. You're not committing to all in your whole army. You're just giving yourself a way to deal some damage. Cool. So this is the kind of game where I feel like if your macro was tightened up earlier, you could have just killed them with +1 Roach Ravager.
Yeah, because I was quite happy like mid-game-ish, like getting some stuff done, but the macro was just like expanding, and I should be getting this win.
Lurker upgrade, always the range first prior to speed, yeah, defensively?
Yes.
Add speed after? Yeah, okay.
Yep, range then speed.
If somebody else wants to go first, they can, otherwise I have a replay. Nobody else is ready.
Thank you.
Do we only have Protoss games?
I'm not opposed to having a match from a different matchup, but I think we were mainly focusing on Protoss. Doesn't matter that much to me. So is this whenever you're up, you can pass lead to
Thank you
whoever?
for the coaching on this game.
No worries. Your notes should be in the document. Make sure all those mineral lines have 16 on them, mining minerals all the time. And then, yeah, try to mix in some indirect pressure, because you're going to be facing a lot of F2 enjoyers in your ZvPs.
Yeah.
I've got a ZvT versus a 4800 Terran called Free Points, former GM, or I've got a more relatable MMR for a Protoss player. So whatever the group wants to see.
Do y'all care? Terran or Protoss? I'm down with either.
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, let's do the Terran one just for fun. So we have
Okay,
a little bit of
there we
ZvT.
Yeah, I
to
would also
chew on.
like a Terran one.
See, did you write the coaching tips on the doc, or?
Yes. So in the player replay analysis, I have system under that.
Okay.
It's kind of near the top.
Ah, see. Okay, there.
Request
I have
before you then share this.
I have a genuine question. As a Zerg player, oh well, I'm a TOS player myself. I just came here just to like try to find weak points in my PvZ.
Mm-hmm.
With because the one build I do is I push across at 5.5 minutes with about 4 Void Rays and about 20 charge lots. How does a Zerg hold that?
Roach Queen. The Charge Lot Void Ray build is incredibly strong if they try to go for melee upgrade and they don't have Banelings already. So that's one of the builds that it can really catch a Zerg off guard if they open up the wrong way and they skip roaches. So that's a very good build. But ideally the Zerg has 7 to 10 queens and they have a bunch of roaches with +1, and that would be the way to hold it.
Okay.
Yep, Roach
And
Queen
then-
is basically what we have to use to defend almost everything from early Protoss attacks.
Who should I give the leader?
Vowels, Kerrigan. Fuck Vowels.
Ah, see.
So even like if that hits at like a 5-minute mark, you should have Roach take out.
Yeah, the Roach Warren should go down at 4 minutes, and the Lair should go down a little bit after that. So Zerg should have started their Roach speed at least, and they should have some Roach Queen to defend it. But that is a relatively good build. I've definitely lost to it, especially if the Void Ray player does a good job of clearing all scouts. You want to make sure they don't know that you don't have a third, and also that they don't know that you're going for Zealots.
Yeah. And if instead of Zealots they went to dead, that's just obviously more Roach Queen, but the Adepts add like the ability to shield them, right?
Yeah, the Adepts can outmaneuver, whereas the Zealots are just trying to overpower their target.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Neuro, for this game, I think it's pretty obvious that my lack of scouting and autopilot, just assuming that he had a third base, causing me to think that I can drone my third freely, and probably partially my fourth, was the downfall. So I think that's going to be obvious to everybody, but feel free to be as brutal as you want. I'm kind of a returning player to StarCraft after work took me out of town. And consider the chitinous plating to be very thick and be as brutal as you want prior to noticing the lack of scout and the over droning.
Cool. Do you normally 18 hatch or it's scuffed?
That's scuffed.
Okay.
Yeah, last game. This is the last game of the night. I was tired, and I do notice the second I get tired, the first thing that goes out for my mechanics is scouting. I just get really lazy with scouting and go into autopilot. So, assuming that he was a respectable Terran player going for a third and just not having a ling on the third and having no idea that I was being kind of two-based.
Yeah, you don't really need to scout that much against Terran. I feel like that's one of the matchups where we can scout the least and get away with it. Just because their attacks are based on critical upgrades like Blue Flame and Stim.
Yeah.
Other than that, there are a very small number of builds where they can actually just yeet their stuff at you and kill you. So you can pretty much just drone with Spotterlings outside their move out lane.
Right.
It's a really good move here. But yeah, if you're tired, you're not going to remember all of your macro fundamentals. Okay, so you're pulling off gas at 100. When do you take the third base normally?
Generally, it's the 20th drone. I do the whole, 2 drones into gas. The third drone would go to the third to prevent the SCV from blocking it, and then the fourth drone would be your third drone on gas kind of thing. So,
Gotcha.
Clearly scuffed this game, but that's what I would normally do. At this MMR, there's not a whole lot of Terrans that are actually sending the SCV to the third or sending the Reaper directly to the third, so it's kind of a free...
Yeah, I just drone up my gas fully normally with 3 workers, and then I have my 20th drone goes to the natural to mine, and then my 21st drone goes to the third directly. and that'll usually arrive there before the Reaper gets there. And if there is an SCV, you can just build an Overlord and make some more queens and just take it later. But I would heavily advise getting a creep tumor out at the natural. Let's just back it up and talk about the first Reaper interaction. So sleepy mistakes aside. A Reaper's showing up. What your Lings want to do, this is a really strong move. Try hold position with Lings next to drones. What the Reaper wants is they want to shoot your Lings and get your Lings to chase the Reaper away from the hatch and away from the drones, so they have the ability to fight you off creep. You don't actually want to trade with the Reaper before Ling speed though, if you don't have to. So your Lings are actually just babysitting the drones. And if you hold position, the Reaper will shoot at your Lings and usually run away because they expect you to just auto attack and just follow them.
Oh, I gotcha.
You hold position like right here. You just hold position, and what can the Reaper do? They can shoot that one drone at the top, but then you can A-move with your Lings. And it saves you a lot of APM.
Have you ever considered, or do you swap the hotkeys for stop and hold position? Or do you find that if you swap that your attack move and hold position are too close to each other?
I basically never use stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I removed it also.
I forgot that was even a thing.
Well, that answers that.
Yeah. Okay, so try to creep.
Super late here.
Try to creep with your natural. Let's go to the moment when your queen is out. This is like, I know this is kind of tedious early game stuff, but it's super important for getting ahead. So your queen comes out. Your queens and your Lings are a team that gets the creep tumor out early. So what you're gonna do is your queen is just gonna A-move toward the edge of your creep. She's gonna shoo the Reaper away, and then the Lings are gonna follow her and help her protect the first creep tumor. She is going to shit the first tumor behind herself, so her body is blocking it and creating some distance between the Reaper and the tumor, just so the Reaper can't kill it. But this is gonna, for one, allow you to get creep connection faster, and for two, start applying pressure directly across the map at your opponent. Also, don't be afraid against the first Reaper to really push the Reaper off creep a bit. The queen can walk out here, and that's fine. She's safe. She can walk out here. It would take the Reaper 35 years to kill a queen. So you're not really scared about losing the queen, and you really want to get that creep tumor up there. So I'll write this down for you. First 4 Lings, assist natural queen.
This is also just the intimidation factor of playing against the big bad boogeyman 4800 Terran player. And so I'm thinking, well, if I don't have my third, and that 300 minerals can't be allocated to a third base, then the double inject to drone and eventually take my third later. But yeah.
No, the adjustment is you make 2 queens.
2 queens, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're rushing for 7 queens. So many Zerg games are lost because you didn't get 7 queens for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because you got supply blocks, sometimes it's because you lost drones early. Okay, you're ahead, you can now drone to 70. That's pretty fun. The Reaper died early, which is a huge fumble for the opponent. So what I would do is I would look at getting a fast 4th base and drone like you're stealing a car or something, like you're going crazy. They fucked up big time. That's a big mistake. And your response 100%. To that should be to drone, and then also just keep vision for if they go for a Hellion shove.
Now 70, 72, is this still safe if it's 2 base all in? Yes?
Yes. The saving grace upgrade for you is Baneling speed.
Okay.
Yep. When is your Ling speed going down? Is that just a sleepy fumble?
Yep. Yeah, this entire game is a bit of a sleepy fumble. But
okay, so
tactics.
Some ZvT build notes. Ling speed, first 100 gas, pull off gas, and then you want to send first, same thing as with systems game, send first inject of main larva into gas to refill. Ends up being right around 3 minutes 30. If you mess it up, just 3:30, refill the gas. Yeah. And then at that same time, at 3:30, you can set your main worker rally point to the main mineral line. That's gonna set you up to oversaturate the main and grab your second gas, while your natural is gonna be filling for minerals, and then you point your natural at the third to fill for minerals. So you're trying to fill your third for minerals and your second gas in the main, and your goal convergence point against a 2 base all in like this is 2 gas, 1/1 shit whack a Ling Bane with Bane speed and queens.
I love all of that. The only caveat that I like to make, and if there's a counterpoint to this, that's fine, but I tend to take the second gas at the bottom side of the natural, so that if there is a Banshee coming in, they cannot freely harass the gas geyser in the main that's exposed, where the spore is typically center of the mineral line.
If a Banshee is killing your extractor, you have other problems in your life. Specifically, you're underqueened. They should not be able to pressure you like that. If you have the one spore, your spore should also be slightly adjusted to account for your base orientation.
Okay.
So think about your base as like your whole Zerg cluster, like a triangle, where you've got the different edges. So the main places where the Banshee would strike you would be right here and right here. Which means that your spores, instead of being dead center of your mineral line, the one in the main should be adjusted a little bit up and right to cover that upper right extractor, and the one at the third base should be a little bit down and left to cover those extractors, because your queen should be in the middle anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So play more like a human person and less like a robot.
Yes.
And not put a dead center. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. This build they're going for is very strong. The first big mistake I see here is no fourth base. What you want to do as a Zerg, your mindset, is you are a macro punishment machine. Anytime they don't contain you, you expand and you grow like you're a deadly and like violent Zerg hive cluster, which you are. So this area right here is free real estate. There is a place that is open for leasing, and there's no one who's contesting this territory. All those mineral patches are fresh, and that base could also be generating more larvae for yourself. This base as well is wide open, and you can take a fourth base against a 2-base all-in. The beautiful thing about that is oftentimes they won't check for it, and then you can just transfer your workers later on.
Right.
You can take a fourth hatch against 2-base all-in. You can't drone to 85, like you'll die if you drone that high, but you can afford the base.
So I thought in a standard game, assuming no proxies and again assuming standard, the earliest that you could take your fourth base would be like 5 to 5:10, 5:15. Are we saying that we can take it sub 5 minutes?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, the hatchery is so jacked. Another nice change from Heart of the Storm to Legacy of the Void is the hatchery grants you 6 supply now. So just think of it like I'm building an overlord.
Right.
You're building a slightly more expensive overlord that gives you creep, and it gives you larva income, which is insane.
Okay.
Neuro, Rocky in our audience has raised his hands. He's a Terran player. He might want like.
He's invited, but he's not accepting the invitation.
Okay. I see. This one.
Yeah. I think they asked me to stream in Discord so they could see the StarCraft because they can't talk right now. They DM'd me about it.
Okay.
Cool. So, Lair.
Generally, this is when I would be looking for a third base. Again, sleepy stuff aside, 5 minutes would be my kind of internal rhythm for check for the third, have a Ling there, so when they land the third, I can see it and take a fourth base somewhere between 5 and 5:15. But now that I know I can take it sub 5 minutes, I can work that in.
I'm writing this out for you. Take 4:30 to 5 minute fourth base if Terran is not pressuring. Okay, this is just a general note for everyone who's Zerg all the time. Queens focus the Medivac. You might know this, but the damage is double, or it's like more than double. Queens attack faster against air, and they have more range against air. And the air units are more valuable since they're energy based and they're gaining value over the course of the game. I actually beat a GM Terran a couple weeks ago, and they complimented me and they said, wow, you actually focus the Medivac. No Zerg does that, and I forgot to micro it because no one does that. But the Medivac is like the strongest point of their whole push because it's gaining value throughout it, even if you aren't killing stuff. So yeah, if you ever have Queens and Hellions, like right now, the Queens can attack the Hellions, yes, but if they attack the Medivacs, you're putting them on a timer to get out. But if you are attacking the Hellions, they can just drive around freely, and Queens are never going to catch them.
What's funny too is if you do attack the Medivac, there's so few Terrans, at least at this MMR, I can't speak for yours, that will not repair that Medivac. So the next engagement, it's also susceptible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, they're doing the
Does this
one.
also
Go ahead.
does this also translate over to PVT, PVZ? I presume these like some of these tips here. and everything.
Queens always focus the warp prism. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to be really careful. I would say the warp prism is one of the highest skill units for Protoss, so that you can really tell how good they are based on not just their ability to micro it with a push, but also to use it as a backstab and harass piece. Like, that's, to me, the difference between a Masters 1 and a GM Protoss is the GM Protoss knows how to backstab me with the Prism and also knows how to keep their Archons or whatever unit they're juggling alive with the Prism.
Okay.
So keep focusing that Medivac. Your fourth base is going up here. Bane
Should
speed.
have a macro hatch down now, I think.
Yeah. You could go without it. Let's see.
1-1 at least should be queued up here right away as well. It's already late.
So they're moving out now. One of the facts about the 2-base all-in is it's a little bit harder to counterattack them because they don't have a third. So the number of places you can attack are fewer. Another thing that you should be very prepared to do against a 2-base all-in is be able to sacrifice a base. So this base right here is not actually crucial to you winning the game because you have this.
Yeah.
So if you ever have a position where they've just got too many goddamn tanks at the low ground there and you can't engage that, fine. Transfer all the drones to your other base and then expand up to here. So you want to expand away from the push. A lot of these cases, the Terran is setting up a siege position and they're betting all their money on the fact that you're going to attack into that siege position and take an awful trade, and then they're going to win.
And so even though, so if I knew that he didn't have a third, I would do exactly that and just be basically Gypsy Zerg and migrate my home. Sleepy Time, Kerrigan is thinking, okay, well, he's got a third, even though that doesn't make sense because he'd never be able to afford to do this push at this specific timing if he actually had a third command center. So it's just kind of all over the place, and I overcommit here, I think, for no reason. I have time to just, as you say, move the drones over to the other base from whatever opposing direction he's attacking from and just relax for a moment.
Yeah, your creep is good, so you have a lot of time. You're not actually threatened until they're shooting your drones. You can use your hatcheries as a shield because they have 1,500 health and they have 1 armor. So you have a lot of time where Marines are going to be stimmed and trying to shoot the base. Basically, what you want to think about doing here is massing as many units as you can, and you want to try to take trades off of the Terran's timetable. The Terran wants you to take trades at certain times. And Pig was telling me this, one of the most tilting things for them is when they stim and shoot you to try to bait you into them, and you just run away. They get really upset because they're losing a lot of the health of their units, and they didn't get a trade out of that. So this is the way that you can just manipulate the situation psychologically, is you refuse the Terran's terms for battle, and you take the fight at a random point that you decide. Not when they stim and they agitate you, but whenever you feel like, okay, I think I have enough, and I have Bane's morphing behind this. So let's just kind of think about this fight for what you can do. What you would do here is you see, okay, they have a ton of stuff here. The Queens run directly back just to try to save some of them. You're probably going to lose 3 based on the position of this
corner
stuff.
there. Yeah.
So they're not in the best spot, but it's not the end of the world because you do have speed Banes on creep. So you want to be making sure that your bases are injected, which looks pretty good. You are a bit supply blocked, but it's not the worst thing because you can spam Banes. So you can just dump all of your money into Banes against a build like this, and it's not that bad. You just want to make sure you always have Banes.
Sorry, should I be throwing down a Roach Warren given that it, like, even though I wouldn't have Roach Speed for ages because it's a 2-base all-in? No, just stick with Ling Bane Queen.
Ling Bane is great. Yeah, you have the ideal comp here.
Okay.
It's all about when and where you take the fights, and all about continuing to make Banes before you trade Banes. The main way that Terran wins is they trade out all your Banes, and then you have Ling only, and then they just stim up and kill you.
Yeah,
So you should be just holding down the Bane key on those Lings.
What MMR is this?
The Terran is 4.8k, he said.
Yep.
Damn.
Okay, so this Terran is actually being really bad about their wall-off discipline. They aren't even putting the reinforcements in the wall, they're just parading at you. So if we look at their base real quick, what I would do since you've stabilized, you still have your 4 bases. Like, to be honest, this push they did was very half-assed. They should have been trying to kill drones and stuff, but really all they did was clear up creep in the middle. Correct, I would take every ling that you possess and yeet them all like this.
Just cut off reinforcements and cause a distraction for him so he can't focus on the front end fight.
Yeah, send them into the natural, and then all of the new lings that you make, morph all of them into Banes. This is one of the most crucial and key ways for Zerg to beat Terran and to steal the momentum from them. Terran players think of themselves as the multitaskers. They're the ones who have all these amazing skills with their splits and with their drops, but they end up making a lot of fights like this, which are just, it's a one-dimensional fight. They have their shit and it's in a clump outside your base. Good job. They're not multitasking. They're doing one thing at a time. So if you yeet all your lings at them, their tank is just sitting here stupidly on the map. This tank is just sitting here on the map, way out of range of a base, and you have like 15 Banes up here. They can't do shit to you. They can't go uphill against you. And then they're going to have like 40 lings in their natural and they're dead. So that's a real way that you beat these consistent bio pushes where they're sieging outside of you, is whenever you get a big clump of lings and Banes, yeet all the lings around the map into their base and just slam the Bane key and make as many Banes as possible to survive.
Right, yeah, so if they try to push, they still have to micro back against the Banes, and then at some point, once those lings get across the map, they have to deal with that.
Yeah.
I was pretty disappointed here with this decision making. The Hydroden is pretty egregious because at no point will this upgrade ever finish. At no point will I afford to or have the room to breathe to make Hydras. So any of this gas between the upgrade and the Hydroden itself could have just been more Banelings, and as far as the extra minerals, that could have just been more Queens or Lings. So, or a Macro Hatch, even like anything other than the Hydroden would have been better here.
Yeah, no, I just like random side info. Yeah, that's why I was like asking the MMR, because I kind of saw that the turn was just like lacking on the wall, and I saw units rallying across the map. So I was just
that's the thing, though, is that happens up to GM too. Like even in GM, a lot of Terrans, like we were talking at the beginning, they're just 2-base all-in specialists, so they don't actually know how to macro that well behind it, which means you have a very clear win condition. And also, aggressive players like that usually are not good at defending stuff because they rely on controlling the action on the opponent's side of the map. So if you put action on their side of the map, then they're not going to be able to do both their attack and defend well. Normally one of those things is going to fail for them, and your advantage as the player with a higher worker count means that you can afford to do that because you have more production over time.
Right, yeah.
Cool. Another just random note, tighten up your 1-1 and Bane speed upgrades. I know you're tired for that one, but the 1-1 being crispily timed is really good, and then Bane speed being crispily timed is really important.
Very good. What MMR are you?
Currently 4.15, floating between kind of 4.25 and 4.15.
Okay.
Previously was 44.50, but again, I took some time off from the game and returning player, so trying to get back into the swing of things.
What would you say is like, Neuro, what would you say is the most like frustrating thing a Zerg can deal with and do?
The most frustrating thing that Zerg has to deal with from other people?
Yeah, especially from TOS.
From Protoss, the most annoying thing is definitely the 5 Gateway Glaive Adept with Prism. That's probably the strongest build, in my opinion, in terms of your ability to spam it against Zerg, and it's just so hard to have the right drone count and defend everywhere at once. So yeah, if I'm thinking about the easiest way to beat a Zerg, pro block, make them take their natural at their third, and then go for 5 Gateways of Glaive Adept. It's super awkward to defend.
Yeah. Especially like that timing attack that hits at 5:35, like roughly 5 minutes, right, with 5 Gate Glaive Depths.
Yeah. Yep, it's ouchy. Yeah, when I place like 6k Protoss like Maples, it's like, okay, he can just kill me with a Depths if he wants to.
No mining time. It's like running through different places all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten system and fuck vowels. If you pass lead to Sugar Cult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another replay though.
Should
I
have
don't
called
know,
don't
shall we
expose
call-
any of my build orders or anything.
Okay, this is a bit awkward.
It's all good.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna just pick one random game because I will pick one random game, okay?
It's valid.
Neuro, while we're getting set up into this next replay, what's your thoughts on whether or not it's viable to defend Adepts, Glaive, or otherwise with Ling Bane Queen? Or does the Baneling just kind of peter out because it's like, depending on the connections, you might not be able to maintain the gas income to keep up with the Baneling morph, to keep up with their Adepts, right? It kind of all comes down to the Bane engage, I think.
Yeah, Adepts can split to mitigate splash, so Bane is not as good as Roach. Straight up.
Yeah.
You can sometimes make it work, but it's not the ideal unit to go for.
Yeah, it feels like it works at the lower leagues, and then the higher I go, the less effective it becomes because the Protoss players start to grow a brain and split, and
Yeah,
it all kind of falls apart.
I call it a wisdom warren some of the time. The Roach warren isn't the structure that you want to make because Roaches, you can't really force wins with it against Protoss anymore. But it's the structure that we have to make to defend pretty much all of the ground-based all-ins. So, yeah,
Correct,
getting
yeah.
that at like 4 minutes to 4:20 is just really prudent and wise. I try to think about like, what would Elrond do? He would build a fucking Roach warren. It's just, it's really silly whenever you don't have one and you're like, oh, guess I'll die.
Also, what are the weaknesses of a 12 pool?
You don't have gas. Your ling speed is very late. Yeah, your defense against 2 adept chrono ends up being kind of awkward because you have slow stuff.
Sorry, I'm just asking this like from a TOS point of view because I'm a TOS player and I just like want to fucking destroy Zergs because I hate Zerg.
Yeah, that's fair. They're kind of icky, sticky, so I see that's offensive to
Like-
Protoss.
Yeah,
So-
no, like I love my 2 base all-ins, 3 base all-ins. I fucking love that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 3.2 average.
Cool.
Okay.
What's your thought about 15 hatch? I think this is a Roach push, called, or you should
No,
do that.
I have picked the 15, 15, 15 as my default versus everyone.
Yeah,
I
because
just
I love it against Terran, but I don't know how to make it work against Protoss.
It's fine. I would say it's one of those things that comes down to personal preference because with this build, you end up with more larva earlier, and then with the standard like 16 hatch build, you end up with a little bit more drone earlier. So it just kind of depends on what feels better to you. Neither of those I would really twist your arm and say, no, you have to play it this way. Because there are GMs who play the like 14 or 15 hatch build every time, and then there are people like me who go 16 hatch every time. So it's not really what's going to cause you to win or lose.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, like, do you need to like make things happen or not? Or you
No.
can, like, just go macro.
No, it's a pretty normal build.
Okay.
Yeah,
you,
you're
you
not
still
all in or
get
anything.
blocked. You still get blocked with the 16 hatch from Protoss, or on the smaller maps, I guess.
Smaller maps. Yeah.
You can get blocked on a big map too if they send it really early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pro blocks happen fairly often. That's why I always send the drone out at 145.
Mhm,
So
got it.
Lings in the base is fine. You're gonna probably lose them just because the adept is gonna be able to chase them. But the
yeah,
main
I
thing,
just use them for scouting purposes.
yeah, that's fair. Just
Is this worth it? Like, so we get the scout off, but then these lings aren't going to get out. They're going to die, and we're going to have to remake larvae that could have been drones to deal with the adept should they send it across the map. So is this worth it for us as Zerg?
I would say no, but it does gain you something of value, so it's not terrible.
Okay.
And the Protoss does have a chance to mess up. Because you also have to think about the human factor of you are now stressing the opponent and forcing them to play based on your terms. I want you guys to think about that whenever you're taking your fights and you're also looking at your replays, is whose terms are dictating the time and the place of the battle. Because a lot of times you're taking a bad fight, not because you don't have a good army, but because you're taking fight at the opponent's terms. You're taking it where and when they want to take it. and you're not refusing their terms and making your own. So here, even though the Lings are going in and they're probably going to die, the Protoss now has to chase them. So you're creating the location of the fight, which means you have a super free third base right now. Super free third base Ling speed, and all your drones are safe. So there is an upside for this. But we've actually sacrificed all of our macro to do this. So you want to get 30 supply third every time. Refill.
So is it?
No, I'm the kid who is chasing the ball over the soccer field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that live 3 days a day, 3 days a week, 6-hour things.
No, because I was even like as a TOS player, like I've seen this like before. It's like they send the fucking 4 Lings across, they do achieve fuck all with it, and by the time like I'm done, like I never actually thought about just sending the fucking 2 adepts across to do harassment. To be honest, like that's actually like fucking smart.
2 adept harass wins a lot of games just outright. You just have to make sure that you have another unit in case they try to backstab you. But because 2 adepts will one-hit drones, unlike SCVs, the 2 adept power spike early on is really, really strong. And if Zerg makes less than 8 Lings, they're going to lose multiple drones to it. So yeah, 2 adept chrono pressure is really good. That wall is that good?
That's a weird wall, to be honest. Like as I've seen this.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can scout through the warp gate technology or?
Yeah, let's go back to that key read. Like if I'm really playing sweaty, you're looking at the game time right here. If you see no research on the cyber core by 2:30, let's say, it's Stargate. Yeah. So we're looking at this. The order of operations is you get Ling speed, you pull off gas. I think your build is a little bit different though. But basically, as I'm pulling off gas from Ling speed, I'll double check. So 2:30, it's not blinking, so we know that it's Stargate. So that's really cool. That means that you can get an Evo, and you can get melee after your Ling speed if you want to. And yeah, just getting queens and your spore on time. And you're mainly trying to
I need
test a third.
Wikipedia of these reads. I don't know.
It could what?
Wikipedia of these reads. What means what?
Yeah.
Just all compiled in one place so I can like learn it.
The cybercore and you. If cybercore not researching
that's actually a good title, the cybercore and you for DvT.
Yep.
Can it be
what happens if the cybercore is researching at 2:20? I'm gonna tell you some of the random ones. Okay, if we go to the cybercore and we're looking at it here, and then 2:20, it's starting. It's probably a Twilight build.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably. If it's researching at around 2:20.
Just a quick curiosity question while we're on topic, and I realize this might not be applicable sub 5K, but what percentage of your games would you see where when you watch the replay it turns out to be a fake, where you know they're researching the cyber, they shoot your overlord or you move the overlord, they cancel it, and it's Stargate? Just, I mean, obviously that delays their Twilight, but is that still common at your level, or?
No, I would say it's extremely rare. Yeah.
Okay.
And the main reason why it's rare is because a lot of people don't pay attention to their overlord anyway. So the Protoss ends up wasting their energy and trying to fake someone out when they're not even looking at them.
You're not even looking.
They're like trying to pump fake really hard, like, I'm gonna cybercore, I'm gonna research, and the Zerg's like.
So what you're saying, I'm shooting myself in the foot by doing this, because I think I'm being smart here.
The only people who will fall for a pump fake are the people who are looking. If they're not looking, they don't care. They're like, I'm doing a roach all in, and you're like, I'm gonna fake him out.
I sit here looking at the in-game timer. I'm like, I start my cybernetics core research to get my first adept out, and then boom, at like this time, I cancel that research just so I can get my fucking Stargate or
us hive mind Zergs are too. We're too brainless to fall for your high level trickery. We're not even looking, bro.
Do any of you know Dungeons and Dragons rules, like D&D?
Yeah.
You attempted to confuse the Zerg, but the Zerg must have an intelligence of 4 or more for it to work. Didn't work.
No, that's So it's like I'm pretty much better off just leaving a Cybernator's core research just to do its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Until you're 5.4K, the answer is overwhelmingly yes.
Yeah. Don't try fake outs. They won't see them.
Oh, that's fucked.
Yeah. Okay, so
The
the
second guess.
Yeah,
the third base being
bullshit.
late is probably our biggest mistake so far.
Yeah.
So 30 supply third. You have spores at a good time. That's good. Your queen count being 2 is a major problem. You're in a terrible rush to get 7 queens. 7 queens is your magic number, and that's 4 injecting and 3 injecting, 4 creeping / defending.
You keep talking about the 7 queens as a minimum. What is the like for those of us who enjoy the defensive macro style? What is the upper limit? Is it 10 queens? I've seen Raynor do 13, 14. Like, what's the average?
11, I would say, from just my personal experience.
I would get probably, I would say you can keep spamming them if you're losing them. Like one, I guess criteria I have is if they're going battle cruisers, I kind of just spam queens because I assume that they're going to get Yamato'd. So you end up just having a pretty short life expectancy of your queens, but you're making them constantly. If you're playing like normal macro stuff, I would say probably not going past 10. Just because the queen is a relatively low DPS unit against ground. So if they have like a ground-based army, like in one of the replays we saw before, where it's Colossi and Archons and Disruptors, queens don't really do too well against that. So having more supply in other army is relatively better. So if you do have a silly amount of queens, it can make yourself weak against certain stuff. Also, queens suck against charge lots and Archons. So yeah, I think 7 is a minimum, and then maybe if they're going air, you can go past 10. But if they're going ground, I wouldn't really go past 10.
Is the just a quick deviation to a different matchup in ZvT? Is 9 or 10 the minimum so that you can have 3 injecting and then 3 in one control group on one side, 3 on another control group on the other side to prevent the whole Hellion run by? Or is
you can just have your queens basically here. If we're looking at this 3-base setup,
yeah.
If your queens are here, then they can lean left. If you need to block the natural, your lings are already helping you do that, and then they can lean right. And your third base should have fewer drones anyway, so the queen should be relatively closer to the natural.
Natural, got it. Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Also off-rate Zerg, so this is kind of like helpful because I decided to off-rate Zerg just so I can learn Zerg's weaknesses.
A spy.
There's a spy in our midst. It's okay.
Overlords.
It's okay, I'm dating a Protoss player.
What?
Yeah, I know. The controversy. Okay. So a queen count being 7 is going to help us a lot defend stuff. Ooh, Spire. What's this for?
Stargate. But he researched blinks. What the fuck?
But this is standard. Okay,
Yeah.
so Oracle, I would say what the Protoss is doing is probably the closest to standard that you can get at this MMR bracket. They went for some Oracles for vision into +1 weapons and blink. And then they're going for some observers and a prism. And they're saturating their third for minerals. This is like kind of gateway man style. Hero played this way. I think Trappist played this way a lot. This is probably the most standard of standard. And against this, what I want is 7 to 10 queens, melee 1, melee 2, Hydra Den, Hydra Speed, Hydra Range, Bane Nest, Bane Speed. I'm just going to write these out for you. So versus standard Oracle into ground. We want melee +1 after Ling Speed, and then Lair plus Bane Nest, and then Hydra Den plus Bane Speed, and then you go Hydra Speed into Hydra Ranged, +2 melee, and then you're basically going for 170 supply of Lingbane Hydra and push. And the idea here is you hit before Storm is ready with this style. Why what?
Why is it not roaches and Ravager?
Because oracles are free kills on Ravagers. This opponent didn't play well in the sense of they're not using their Stargate to make 3 oracles. It's better if they make 3. Because if you make 3 oracles and they're just banking energy and Zerg attacks you with Roach Ravager, you zap every Ravager before it even gets to you. That's why we can't Roach Ravager Oracle player anymore. And this whole style became standard after the Queen Walk was nerfed. We used to be able to Queen Walk this style and it would never work. But since we can't transfuse off creep, the style is now very strong. Mainly just because we can't have Queens assisting the Ravagers across the map.
Even if the Zerg player has like dropper lords and transports the queens and then drops the queens and spreads creep through the overalls.
You can do that. It just requires way more APM to do so. So it's relatively harder to do. Before you just walk your queens and walk your army and then just transfuse and bile. So that's a lot fewer things going on than trying to send the queens in a drop, make sure they don't get sniped by the stalkers, and then try to drop creep, lay the creep, and then try to be on the creep to transfuse. There are too many things that can fail for that to be like super easy and reliable to do. Yeah, mutas here.
Not necessarily the best, to be honest.
Mutas are the best to make. I'll just give some notes here. Try muta swell when they open DT plus prism and get no damage. So the reason that's good is because they dumped a bunch of gas and stuff and they don't have a Stargate. So they're behind in getting their Phoenix response out, and they also don't have quick blink because they went for Dark Shrine or something like that. If they're going for this sort of style, the Blink Stalkers are going to beat the mutas every time. So you want to make sure you have some like ground-based solution for dealing with Stalkers. +2 melee lings, just counter them. So I think getting acquainted with melee 1 into melee 2 is going to make you way stronger against this. And then as a note, that's kind of a common theme here, is take your 4th base fucking early, like say 4:30 to 5 minutes. You can pretty much do this every game. This is one of the quick hacks to being a macro god, is you just expand like you own the place. You're not scared to take a 4th. A 4th base is a very thick and tough thing to put on the map. So if they have enough army to kill the 4th base, that's going to take them time that you can be doing other stuff, like you can attack their army, you can counterattack them, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay, and we're also against another F2 customer here, which means if you run your lings up at the wall here and then run them away, the adept and the stalkers will walk out and they will leave the wall and you can run in. So I would probably wager that maybe 2% of Protoss at your level are going to actually not use F2 and hold position in the wall and have wall discipline. So just try that randomly. Try to check the natural for stuff. The 3rd base is where they want you to attack. Yep.
There's someone who wants to join the call. Just DT.
Sure.
To jump in to be able to speak.
Yeah, I got him. Thank you.
And we also switch to the production tab for a second. I just want to see if he has Storm or not. Does he have Storm?
No. There's Templar Archives, but Storm is not researched. They're very low on gas right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, their main mistake though is they don't use Chrono.
Yeah.
Chrono's so strong. They have like 3 Nexus full.
Also, as a Zerg player, would you recommend taking your 4th and 5th at roughly the same time, like with a 20-second span between each?
Your 4th and your 5th?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to do. It just gives you a fallback plan. Like say the Protoss had 3 Oracles and a shitload of Stalkers, and you're going for a 4th base here. You may need to cancel that, so if you did have an early 5th, then you basically just have a 4th now. So that's good. Definitely very good to do. And then a lot of times in the game, players will do stuff like this. They take a base with no defense, and if you don't punish it at the start, then they can get a bunch of buildings, and then now it's secure, but before then it was not.
So playing Muta, what is our like gameplay usually if you play Muta? Is it like eventually go up to lurkers and that get like a lead, or
if
what's
you're
our mindset?
Yeah, you have 2 options. you can do short-term harass, where you're trying to get as many probe kills with the mutas as you can, and then switch into ground, or you're going for a base race, and you want to have a bunch of lings and fast units and a bunch of mutas, and then as soon as they move out, you try to sweep their bases. Those are your two routes here. You're not really going to overpower armies with mutas. That's not what the unit is made for. You won't trade well against almost any army. Like anything Stalker-based, anything Archon-based. If they have sentries, the bubble counters mutas really hard because it reduces that projectile damage. So yeah, it should be all about getting worker kills, and either I'm setting up for a base race, mass muta, air attack upgrades, or I'm going to try to make a strong ground army off the back of this. I have a lot of links and hydras and stuff. That's good. A lot of our spending problems would be fixed if we took our third base and our fourth base earlier. I think the biggest adjustment this whole game is just make sure your third base is down at 30 supply every game. That's going to give you a lot more power just ramping up. But your army is really strong against theirs. That's the nice thing about pivoting from mutas into hydras, is hydras are usually pretty good against the units that mutas are bad against.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing that would really...
I have a question here, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
With mutas, is it better to go for like 3 base on like 66 workers, or like 2 base?
2 base.
4 base, actually. Both of those are wrong.
4.
Mutas are fucking
4 base.
expensive. Yeah. They're fucking expensive, and 5 mutas is not going to change the game. 10 mutas is also not going to change the game. So going for 2 base muta is not viable because we lose to every Protoss ground all in. And we also aren't able to deal critical enough damage to end the game when they have access to Stalkers and a Stargate. So 2 base muta, I feel like, is a good build against Terran and Zerg, but it's not a good build against Protoss because of their ability to 2 base all in us. The Spire is extremely strong as a structure, and most Protoss are going to be poopy ass garbage against a muta switch because they don't use camera hotkeys. So what you want to do is basically have the ability to have a really strong ground army, and then you can either do a dedicated muta swell of like 10 to 15 and harass while you get hive tech, or you can say, I'm going to base race you and I'm going to make as many mutas as I can, like 35 to 40, and I'm going to set my mutas right here, and I'm going to set my Ling army right here, and as soon as you move out, I'm going to sweep your bases. So those are kind of your 2 routes for mutas, and those are basically late game plans for them. Early game, it just isn't really a damaging enough unit to Protoss to justify it.
What happens
Just,
if I'm trying to go for this, like the muta thing you just talked about, and then I see my opponent is on 2 bases? How do I respond to that?
If they're on 2 bases, are they going ground or air?
They're going, let's say, for a Stalker build.
Okay, if they're going for Stalkers and they're on 2 bases, all you need to do is have 3 base saturation of Roach Ravager with +1. 3 base saturation, that's 66 drones, all your gases, all mineral saturation, and you have a 4th. +1 Roach Ravager beats almost everything on the ground, except for like a bunch of zappy oracles that have full energy. But if you went mutas and cleared oracles already, then you're pretty much good to go. Roach Ravager +1 with some links mixed in is extremely strong. Very, very strong.
How about a charge lot on this?
Charge lots are hard countered by Speed Banes, and Roach Ravager, if it's in a big enough clump, the Zealots can't really get a good surround on them. So Zealots aren't that good against Roach Ravager. Well played, Sugar Colt.
GG.
So take your expansions way earlier. The Muta Harass was cool. I like the Hydra switch into an opposite tech. Caught him off guard. Fantastic.
Yeah, I fed pretty much from the information that he has Stargate, so I expected, as in my level, they sometimes go in double Stargate, for example, or whatever. So I was like expecting that I will push him to switch into Phoenixes to counter that, because I will harass him. Not that I expected Blink Stalkers, actually. And yeah, and then obviously Hydras is the answer, and that's game.
Well played.
Got 2 questions for you, Neuro. One is StarCraft related and one's personal. Which one you want first?
StarCraft.
StarCraft, okay. So ideally, we would always want to know what our opponent is doing in order to know, whether to make drones, overlords, units, what have you. When you find yourselves in that situation where your scouting is lacking, or they've denied your scouting, do you go all drones or all army with your unit, or you just kind of play it safe and go 50-50 because you don't really know what's going on anymore since your scouting was denied or you forgot to?
I go all drones just because that's a guaranteed value. Yeah, if you just like guess a random unit just in case they push with something, but then they end up doing something different, you're in a bad spot. Yeah. But every type of army requires drones to sustain it. So it's better to drone if you don't know what they're going for. And then also, one thing that I use as a mental trick is I ask myself, what would be the most obnoxious thing they could go for right now? And it'll be alarming how many times you just guess it. Like you're against a passive Terran, and they had like 4 Hellions on the map, but they didn't take a third, and they didn't trade their Hellions. They're just kind of existing on the map, and you're like, it'd be really silly as BC. Yeah, that's what it ends up being.
Yeah.
So same thing with dealing with Protoss. It's like they've been on 2 base for a long time. They have their warp gate research done. It'd be really annoying DT drops. So then you just make sure you check off those boxes of like the most annoying things you could face from them, and just have some solution for it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So the other question on the personal side, you said you're dating a Protoss player. How do you plan on navigating these waters where I assume, at some point you're going to impart some of your Zergy knowledge onto your partner, and at some point it's possible that the student becomes the master, How are you going to start, as you see them approaching that pivot point where they start to beat you consistently, how do you prevent yourself from withholding some of that Zergy knowledge to improve what's supposed to be your partner to be successful, as your own ego gets in the way and you start to, want to try to strike back for a win?
Yeah, well, that kind of boils down to the difference in individualist cultures and collectivist cultures. The Hive cluster is a very collectivist culture where the well-being of a single Zergling doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But the Hive cluster's ability to survive and propagate itself as a whole, that's what really matters. So if I were to, for example, coach her to be so good at Zerg that she could beat me, that would be hot, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't be upset about it. And it also means that I'm a really good teacher. So yeah, there's only upsides there that I can see.
Please teach me how to...
She likes her Protoss a lot though, so I doubt it.
Please teach me to like get my win rate in PvZ to like 80%.
Do you want to throw in a replay against Zerg that you lost for fun? Or you want to?
Now you're asking for like ancient shit right now.
You haven't played in a bit? Oh, you don't lose to Zergs.
Yeah, my win rate right now against PvZ is like 73%.
He only likes to complain about Zerg, but he wins versus them all of the time,
Yeah.
More of a...
Look, I'm already winning, but I want to win harder.
I want to win harder, exactly.
I want to squish it really hard.
Yeah.
It's bugs.
Sounds like Protoss to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah, I just fucking hate Zergs. Like, the one race, because it's like, this is the whole revenge arc that happened with me. Like, 2 years ago, I fucking hated Zerg. I had a 23% win rate against them, okay? And I spent a month and a half learning every single Zerg build order, every single weak point, and time to push. For a month and a half. And that worked. It got me up to 4.3 MMR. And then I took a break because I was happy. And I took a 2-year break, and I came back, and I still see Zergs haven't learned shit.
Why?
I still do the same shit.
Why do Zergs upset you more than Terrans?
I fucking hate Terrans. My turn run rate is like 42%. We don't talk about it.
Oh, okay.
I can't close Terran late game. The minute the game passes 9 minutes, I've lost automatically.
I see. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Do you guys want to see some ZvP just from my games?
Yeah.
See what's happening? Okay. If you want to swap over to Americas, if you want to be in the lobby. I'm going to AFK for just a couple minutes, and then we will form up. Join the channel Neuro W, spelled the same as my emote, and I'll invite y'all. On Americas.
Right, never been in the American ones.
Yeah, you can just click menu, the globe button, and then Americas.
I would be very interested in a Protoss coaching session with Gamer Richie, to be honest. Just to fix my errors. Like I think I had a coaching session with what's his name? Oh you guys aren't in Platinum Heroes. What's the guy's name? Manu or something. No, Cobble. I had a coaching session with Cobble and he fucking helped me a lot in my ZvP and ZvT. But PvP, actually, no, he taught me something in ZvP and PvP. He taught me stalkers are the least cost-effective unit you can make from a gateway. And what backs that up is it dies to void rays, it dies to immortals, it dies to its own stalkers. But what's the most cost-effective unit? Believe it or not, is an adept. So now when I do proxy robo, I only make adepts, and so far it's been doing all right.
I guess it makes, or it depends, the mobile units and stuff, scouting information.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, like a straight up fight, maybe.
Yeah,
like
just give me a second.
Neuro, is this going to be on YouTube?
I think
he's,
he went for a bathroom or something.
Okay.
But is this going to be on YouTube though?
We'll see. You can say hi to your mom right now.
I don't know. I think maybe our community leaders like Turtle Terran or something like that will ask for like a vote or something like that from the.
I've enjoyed this very much, but I have to go now. So thank you so much for teaching me how to beat your race even more, and live long and prosper.
Thanks for chilling.
Take care.
See you on ladder.
Peace, Alpha.
Neuro, quick question on something that you mentioned several times tonight. Just trying to get an understanding, because I'm, consistently the person who needs to understand the why behind it, right? You keep talking about this fourth base sub 5 minutes, 4:30 to 5 minutes, and I thought the rule of thumb for a Zerg player and the reason why the fourth base versus Protoss and Terran went down between 5 minutes and 5:30, depending on various openers, was because the prioritization was on spending your larva first. And between 4:30 and 5 minutes, you can still spend that larva safely droning. But you seem to be suggesting that in that time window, it's better to invest in the fourth base getting down. Is that kind of the idea, that the earlier fourth base pays dividends given the larva generation, the inject, the access to minerals, over and above spending the larva on your three bases if it's available during that same period of time? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to...
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the fact that our matches end up being scuffed to some extent, and taking your fourth base is one of the best moves you can make when you're supply blocked during that time frame. Yeah, so anytime you have a slight macro hiccup, you have a little bit more money that you could spend on stuff, you can just throw down the fourth base. You're correct in that if you are doing everything exactly perfectly, you would want to spend your larva into drones as long as possible, and then take the fourth base only when you float that first amount of money.
Right, okay.
But from a practical standpoint, yeah, you usually end up having an opportunity where I'm a bit supply blocked, my opponent can't stop me from taking a base, so I'm just going to do so.
No, that's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you. I'll make that adjustment.
Cool. All right, let's get you a nice ZvP. I think this one. What did they do? I don't know. I all in this guy. No, maybe that's not the best.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Because we talked a lot about Terran as well, I kind of want to show you dealing with the Terran. Let me see if I have...
What? You know what? You should be 71% ZvZ win rate. That's what this coaching session should have been. How are we shitting on these Zerg players?
Oh yeah, ZvZ is
oh my god,
really easy if you open 2-base Roach. I don't know if you guys know how to do that wall off. Yeah, it's you pick up so many wins because they like try to bash your wall with it. And that just ends up being really easy to defend. So you get a free win anytime they bash your wall.
I feel like if you have 3 base and you have like a few more drones, then you should be okay. But
you say that, but every time I played Neuro on viewer games, he has always smashed me with a 3-base Ling Bane. So only believe half of what you hear from him today. He might purport this whole 2-base Roach wall off, but then you play him and he smashes you with Ling Bane.
It's a trick.
Okay. How to beat mech. Quick guide. Ready?
I've been liking the what's it called? Neuro. If it's just a bunch of Thors and stuff.
Neuro is very good.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Aussie.
So this was from a best of 3 in ESL. This is a 5.4k Terran. They're exclusively a mech player, so I do have that metagame knowledge. And I do have probably a 50 ping advantage because they're playing from Brazil and we're playing on US East.
Hey, before this match gets underway, what is like the maximum MMR range where you feel that you just are going to be outclassed, assuming that it's not their worst matchup? Like, obviously there's a range where plus or minus 200 MMR anybody could win, but what is that magic number? Is it 500, 600 MMR where you just feel like you kind of don't have a shot, assuming your opponent isn't playing their worst matchup?
I would say 600 MMR feels really tough to surmount. They have to be playing a particularly bad game. But the thing is, you treat it like jiu-jitsu, where you just want to live as long as possible and let them show you the weak points in your macro. So pay really close attention to this. This is what I was talking about with the Reaper interaction. This kind of stuff matters a lot for the tempo overall. Look at my Lings. Look at how few fucks they give.
Yeah, yeah.
They just exist here. Okay, they killed 1 Ling, but it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
I'm gonna do it again.
Did you feel like you got like an early third, or if you want?
I always take a third here. Yeah, 27.
You know what?
I take a third.
27.
Yeah.
You know what I just realized as well is if they overcommit that Reaper with the way that you're positioning the Lings, when the Queen pops, it's within range to snipe and get a few shots off on that Reaper as well.
Yes.
So.
Yep, and now I have 2 queens at the front, which is double the DPS of 1 queen at the front, and I'm making a 3rd queen in the main. So this is a really good move against both Protoss and Terran. Against Protoss, these 2 queens are putting pressure on an Adept. Against Terran, they're putting pressure on a Reaper. And then the Lings are up there on the cliff to punish the Reaper if he jumps up. And then, so just kind of looking at my gas income and stuff, we'll just take my vision. I don't have any gas. There are 3 drones in the main. They get rallied in.
Yeah.
Inject the main. Trying to get the Reaper. So we refilled it, and I'm making nothing but drones. 3rd base is up, making a queen there.
I have a question here, though.
Uh-huh.
When it comes to prioritizing between queen production or drone production, which is the most important in this matchup?
Drone. Because the more drones you have, the more queens you can afford. You can afford 3 queens at a time. So I would say generally you want to spend your larva into drones first, and then with every 150 you float, you make a queen.
Yeah.
So 0 larva and 150 minerals, then I make a queen.
Yes. Up to 7 at a bare minimum. 7 is your lowest queen count for a macro game against both Terran and Protoss. So I have how many right now? I have 6 queens. I'm not at my goal yet. This Overlord in front of my 3rd is extremely important. And then the Overlord at mid-map is extremely important.
Do you generally have your creep in like a creep control group versus a inject control group? Is that kind of your setup, or?
I have some queens off hotkey, and I'm just injecting with camera hotkeys. And then those queens at the front, those are on a control group. So I lose a little bit here, but they're trading out Hellions. I only lost 2 drones.
2 drones, yeah.
And the main reason that is because my natural is oversaturated. And that's a really good thing for me right now because my natural is a way more defensible location than my third. So I would rather have slight mining inefficiency and safer drones than to just transfer all them to my third and put them at risk. So I made just 4 roaches, and my goal is still to drone up. So I didn't really mass roaches.
I've always questioned whether or not it makes sense just to keep all of those drones safe that were eventually pulled off of mining. Some of them were killed at your natural until those roaches or lings or queens pop, and then just move them over, you know, but no.
Yeah, it really depends on how YOLO they're being with their Hellions. My opponent stabbed me a little bit, but not too much. So I'm getting Carapace and Roach speed, kind of deciding on the melee versus ranged upgrade sometimes. Because if they go for mass cyclones, I might go for melee, and if they go for tanks, I might go for ranged attack. I can't remember what I did this game. But cyclones are annoying, but they take forever to kill queens that are transfusing each other, because you can just back up and break the leash. So I'm not actually scared right now, even though I saw a lot of them. Look at the mineral counts. 23 on the third, 21 at the natural. That's so good.
Can you talk about the decision to prioritize your third and fourth gas geysers that went down at your third base as opposed to your natural? Is that?
I had more drones there. That's the reason.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're kind of just flooding your mineral lines with drones, and then whenever you have too many there, it's time to grab the gases and fill them. So let's just look at my third as I get to that point and when I realize that. So my rally point was set at my third, and I'm kind of just doing macro stuff while just holding down the drone key. It's because I saw 25. I saw 25 of 16 in my third, and that told me, all right,
got it.
Now we're actually not efficient here, so I'm going to add gases to make it efficient. And then I switched my rally point for all my hatches back to my natural. To finish topping off that base.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you.
One key note for everyone, I should have mentioned this earlier. Before you ladder, if you actually want to try hard, and be a stronger gamer, do 1 freestyle macro warm-up. 1 macro warm-up custom versus AI and get 200 supply. This will go so far for you being less supply blocked and missing injects in your actual ladder games, because you get to do everything unharassed. The way that I've described StarCraft is it's like competitive piano playing, where 2 pianists are both trying to play a really intense and amazing song, but there's one crucial rule in StarCraft, which is you're allowed to turn over and slap the shit out of your opponent to try to mess them up. But it's at the cost of your own ability to play your own piano piece. So you have to decide, am I prioritizing having really focused and clean macro and focusing hard on that? Or am I trying to slap the shit out of my opponent? But you can't really do both at the same time. So you need to figure out which one you're doing and then be able to practice both of them. So you can drill your macro just in custom games against AI. And then you could also even drill some all-ins where you just try to make sure you crisply execute everything the right way before you get on ranked ladder. Because your first I feel like it's your first hour of playing StarCraft is a warm-up, and then after that first hour, you're kind of at your peak for focus, and you keep your focus peak maybe until you get to hour 3. And then the game is so exhausting that you're going to see some diminishing returns at that point.
Exactly.
I'm just going to write that down so people have that. So your first 1 hour of practice is a warm-up. The next 2 hours are your peak. This is usually, some people may have exceptions with this, then you have diminishing returns. If you want to really pump your ladder rank up, what I would recommend is just playing unranked for that warm-up hour, then play ranked for a couple hours, and then cool down with more unranked.
That's exactly what I was going to say, yeah. This infestation pit, I mean, it's obviously not for like a 3-3 timing because you're still getting 1-1. This has to be Vipers then for the Cyclone potentially into tank push.
Yep.
I imagine.
It's for Vipers and Adrenal.
Okay.
Adrenal is one of those things that you should just think of as extremely strong and very oppressive for you to have on the map.
And then a safety spire in case it's a Liberator transition, or
BC.
you just want the option for or BC. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, notice I'm not trading with them at all. They did their little harass thing, and I'm kind of just chilling with my own max out. I have 82 workers right now, which is pretty good. My bases are injected. I'm taking a 6th base. And I kind of just drive up and try to clear my creep, but I don't really care that much. Roach Ravager is super strong. Keeping one overseer with the army.
Can you just comment on when the, like, typical time, if there is such a thing, to get Overlord speed, assuming that it's, you know, not part of the opener? Like, when do you feel safe enough to afford it without it cutting into your build, upgrades, hive, transitions, etc.?
I would say after both of my Evo chambers are working and I have Bane speed and Roach speed is a very valid time to grab it.
Okay.
Yeah. Just type that. Q&A. Pick up. Burrow is the same thing.
I always struggle with those two upgrades in terms of finding like when to fit them in. I try to go Overlord speed pre-hive, but I never feel like I can justify Burrow pre-hive.
Burrow is a little bit harder to get value out of sometimes, but burrowing a Ling at their future expansions is one of the strongest moves that Zerg can do. That's one of the things that I actually got scolded for back when I was a young Diamond player. We had clan wars, and at the end of the clan war, there was a Masters Protoss who would go over everyone's replays, and he was like, you have a 25 mineral, half a supply unit, and you don't have the watchtower, and you don't have links to their future bases. As a Protoss, I'm upset because we can't do that. We don't have a unit that's that supply and cost efficient to put at those bases, so for you to not do that is you not playing Zerg. And I was like, okay, wow.
That's, yeah, hard to argue that logic.
Yeah, it's very, very strong. Protoss has to either put a probe or a zealot or something, or a DT, which is pretty good. So they've just got like nasty mine, cyclone, Hellion stuff. At this point, the army is so diverse that we just want a strong army of our own. I'm not really thinking super hard about, let me make a perfect counter comp to this. I'm just spamming units at them. I mixed in some Hydras with range because those counter the mines. You said what?
Did everything go to plan that you wanted, or did you
yeah, so far this game is
in
going great for me. Yeah, I'm happy to take trades for them. Taking trades with mech is, if they're even trades, is fantastic because you can remake stuff faster. So production tab during the fight, I had 10 Hydras going, +2 armor, +2 ranged. Adrenal. You could maybe argue that if I delayed the fight for a little bit and had +2 armor and Adrenal, it would have gone better for me. That would be a slight just awareness and timing thing I could have done for myself. Losing these queens is totally fine. They're not playing air, so I don't really need a super high queen count anyway. So for me to get knocked down to 5 queens is not the worst.
I just noticed at 11:10 you just went to 10 gases. You had them prepped, but you actually filled them at 11:10. Is that? I mean,
I don't care about gas that much. Like having 6 gases, you can go a really long way with that, and then 8 gases that allows you to afford your Viper, and then going beyond that means that I have enough for like a Broodlord switch if I want to. But yeah, most people I think struggle with taking their gases too early, and they have a resource imbalance.
Right. Yes.
So we go in again now with a Remax. And because my Remax is a little bit faster and they're on my half of the map, I win this fight. Also, Adrenalings are super busted.
Yeah, that looked dodgy at first, but you're right. He can't reinforce that side of the map as fast as you, so the Hydroling just breaks it, and there goes all of his power units, his gas units.
Yep. And then we clean up these run-bys and stuff. And they're pressuring me, but I still have all my bases and all my drones, so I'm chilling. Pretty happy about it. Simple Roach Hydra Viper. Oh, there was a question earlier that I didn't really give due attention. When you're microing, units that involve Vipers and other stuff, the easiest way to manage it is keep your Vipers on their own hotkey, and then just tell them to follow a Hydra. Specifically a Hydra, because Hydras tend to be at the back line, not the front line. You don't want your Vipers to fly in first. So just tell the Vipers to follow a Hydra, and then just move your army forward, and you might get to see if I do some hold position micro. But hold position, a Roach Hydra based army, and then abducting into it is really good. It allows you to focus on one thing at a time. If I want to get my army in position, and then I want to abduct stuff into my army position. You don't want to run fully into their army. You want to run outside where their army is, and then pull some key units into it. Burrowed Lings at the outside bases. And then that's the static setup, so I don't lose more to the run by. And then we're burrowing more units. So now my opponent is stuck on 4 bases. This is kind of the situation that you want to create for yourself. You let them have the 4 bases. It's really hard to break the 4 bases in an even game. You want to make sure the 5th base for them is impossible to take. So their tanks are clumped, so I did Blinding Cloud.
Can I ask something here? Hi.
Yo.
What do you think about Liberate or Harass in this situation?
Liberate Harass is very strong if Zerg doesn't have a good queen count or some kind of anti-air unit. So if I didn't have Hydras coming out of my bases and I cut some of my spore count, you can run into a lot of trouble against that. And then in a game where, say I didn't have 77 workers and I lost a lot more to Hellions, the Liberator Harass can end up winning the game for Terran. It's a very good play, but it's fairly expensive to do because Liberators are pretty expensive. So it means that those weren't with the army.
You think it's a valid tactic as Terran to just like queue up 3 or 4 Liberators to the Zerg bases just to buy some time?
Yeah, that's
or
a very
is
good
that
move.
too expensive?
I think it's pretty good if you have tanks and stuff at home. Like, you know, you're going to be able to at least delay ground pushes with strong stuff. Sorry, I missed your message of going back 10 seconds. What did you want to say?
No. Well, it's just I was gonna, you know, obviously you've won the game, and that's maybe why you didn't make the adjustment. But I was going to ask, like, 3 minutes ago we went to 10 gas, and you talked about a potential Broodlord transition. I see at the end of the game we're getting double lurker upgrades, but we're also 3,000 gas and 1,000 minerals. So can we justify this gas bank with either a lurker transition to dump the gas or a Broodlord transition, or was the 9th and 10th gas unnecessary? Or were you just not adjusting your economy because you felt like the game was over and you had already won, since he's, you know, in a pretty dire spot here?
I'm glad you asked that, because it was for none of those reasons. It was for a potential Infestor transition. Infestor transition covers you against Thors. It's a kind of specific gas dump thing. Like, I was working with Vipers most of the time because they weren't making Thors. They were making like tanks and Cyclones and Liberators and stuff like that. But if they go past, say, like even 4 Thors, it's just such a huge supply swing that if you mix in 4 Infestors, which spend gas really fast, or even 6, and you can grab 4 to 6 of them for the fight, you end up just crushing them, which is awesome.
100%. Okay, cool. No, that answers that. I wasn't sure if that was an oversight to have that gas, or if it was a precaution to give yourself some options, but I wasn't sure how you planned on leveraging a 3K gas bank. But that answers it.
Yeah, that may have been a little bit high of a gas bank for me, but not too bad. Okay, I have a Protoss game now. Do you ever get spammed?
By... Oh, go ahead.
Chat's asking if I ever get spammed with Reaper Rush at GM levels. Yes, I think it's Maru who started this, going for 2 racks in the wall, and they will send anywhere between 2 and 6 Reapers at you. That's a very common build these days, and it mainly comes down to good queen management and good ling management. You get your ling speed a little bit earlier, and you're just trying to get up like 15 or so lings to sweep the Reapers. They do have like the 3-rack sweeper where they fully commit to it, which isn't really that good. I haven't faced it very much these days, mainly because you can sometimes just defend it with Queen Ling, and then you can also just get in some Roach Ravager. Yeah, what is up, DeVoid? Session's been going great. Okay, we have a nice ZvP here.
I'm wondering in ZvP if you ever get duped by seeing the Twilight going and they do the whole, 3-base, typically Oracle Stalker, but instead they open Oracle, show you a couple Stalkers, but they're actually getting charge. And, you're making Zerglings anticipating Blink Stalkers, and lo and behold, it's charge loss to completely wreck and shit on your Lings.
Yeah, the main mitigating factor against that is getting your Bane Nest immediately after melee if you commit to a melee upgrade.
Bane Nest after melee 1, okay.
Yeah, because that's going to mean, okay, I have something to say about Zealot all-ins. It's not as good against Adepts, but if you have melee against Adepts, they're going to die to Lings anyway. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going Lings versus Blink Stalker, the 50 gas investment just to have the Bane Nest, even if you don't have Bane speed, is minimal.
Yeah, it's very, very cheap.
So this is 16, 17, 17?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Just going for that because I have like in my head the feeling when I see someone's name, are they a cheeser or a macro player? And I don't always remember, but something told me this person was a cheeser, so I was just
Are they print F or not?
Yeah. It's like when they, like the timing on when they write Gulag Kefa.
Yeah.
It's late.
Yeah, I write it late though because I set up all my cameras before I GLHF, and a lot of people think I'm being rude. They're like, "Wow, I thought Neuro was respectful, but you didn't GLHF," and I'm like, "I'm going as fast as I can."
It's a dick move, man. I mean, you have a 3, 2, 1 countdown timer now. There's no reason not to get it in.
My excuse is I'm streaming and trying to talk to chat at that time.
Yeah. Fair.
It is true.
Okay, we're getting Ling speed here. Lings are just kind of watching outside the base, and my Overlord can see there's no Cybercore research, and it's past 2:30. So what does that mean? It means it's a Stargate.
And it's also a Zealot, right? That tells us also that's gas.
They can do Stalker into Stargate, but then it delays the Stargate, but it can still be Stargate.
I'm not reading into the Zealot because I think it was just a reaction to my pool first.
Yeah.
In my level, they don't know the difference.
Yeah.
A unit.
Hacking Zerg. Okay, so I should throw down an Evo at like 70 supply-ish if I end up going melee here. 2 queens at my natural makes me safe against oracles. And then I'm going to have a queen and a spore in the main. Okay, now we see the research going. We're droning. And Protoss should be on their power spike of getting 2 base saturation. They're chronoing probes right now. Okay,
so you're also doing the 1 OV, only the 1 OV across the map.
Yeah.
I notice. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't really care what Stargate unit it is. Okay, I'm just sending it in now. Just get a peek, see if there are any gases. And there are no gases, see the probe going out there. So the Ling at the 3rd base here, look at this delay. This Ling just stopped this whole operation. This happens so often. People try to send a probe out to the next expansion with no escort, no protection, no health benefits, no dental. This probe is just out on its own. And this one Ling, I've delayed their base by like 12 seconds. And it's on hold position too. Just stubbornly sitting there.
Outside of that, the fact that this Overlord was able to get in, scout the gases, and go back to the safety pillar, like I'm sending it in too early, and it seems to force them to warp in a Stalker, and and then I don't have the gas timing, so.
So when is there like a set time stamp when you throw in the OV of like the gases?
If there's no... Yeah, 4 minutes, I would say, if there's no 3rd base and you want to just get a read. Because if I sent that Overlord in and there were 2 gases, I'm thinking of stuff like 2 base charge lot Archon all in, or it could be massive void raised. Yeah, it could be some kind of DT into ground base play. But since it's 2 gas, and I saw that it's 2 gas and an Oracle, I'm safe. They can't hurt me because they have a 3rd base, Oracles, and just some defensive adepts, which means I'm free to drone.
Just real quick before you move on, can you mean, at sub 5k, would you recommend skipping a spore crawler at potentially the natural, or any base for that matter? Or is it just better at this point just to have protection across the board, all 3 bases?
You should have them at all 3 bases. The very latest cutoff point is 415. You have 1 spore per base.
Okay.
Yep. What Cyril usually does is he has 2 queens at the natural, and then he has the 1 queen, and then the 335 spore in the main. And then he'll get a 350 spore at the natural to help the queens in case it's 2 oracle pressure.
Right, yeah.
And then he'll get it at the 3rd base pretty much as soon as the drone spawns there.
Got it.
Yep.
So 335, 350, and then whenever the drone's available at the 3rd. Okay.
And I don't know what y'all's expansion pattern is, but I pretty much always go 4th base, 5th base here.
I actually would have gone line 3rd on even this map as opposed to the triangle. But
I like
just,
this
think
way
that's
because you get a
personal
gold 5th.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I've talked with a lot of Protoss players, and they get kind of shaky and weird whenever you start talking about Zergs with a gold base. They start to argue whether or not it's even a good thing for the game. The Protoss haven't been winning tournaments for a while. It gets kind of upsetting to them. So this base right here is like a major force you can leverage. Just by the time you get this, say my 4th base is going down, I think I take this relatively early, but your main base is starting to mine out, and you can just transfer from your main, get a gold base, and then you're pretty jacked. So,
You're going against your image, Neuro. You're supposed to be, you know, nice and be sympathetic and leverage and you know, tell them that they're not a victim and you know, validate their feelings and not take the gold to restore balance to the game. And here you are advocating for us to take the gold base.
Look, see the evidence before your eyes. Ray Rain is a GM Protoss, and he just said, preach Neuro Zerg OP with gold, remove gold from the game. Exactly. We need to use the landscape to our advantage. So they're going for standard Protoss. This is great. This is what you should expect.
He went on missile attack first, right?
Yes.
Is that for like to be safe or?
It doesn't really matter if you specialize for range attack or melee first, because you can see I'm going melee after that. It was because I didn't know what their army was going to be. I think if you don't know, going +1 range attack Roach Ravager is the safest army you can make on 3 base. It's going to be able to defend everything with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if they go Colossus or some shit like that, you don't want to have melee. But if they go Blink Stalker, you do. But you don't really get that punished for having +1 roaches against stalkers. Like, you still have things to say. It also buffs your queens against the oracle pressure. So +1 range attack is a very, very safe upgrade to choose early. So,
I could be wrong here, but that is one of the main things I see as a variation between Cyril and Raynor, is where Cyril will kind of go range if he doesn't know, whereas Raynor seems to gamble a bit more with melee.
Yeah, Raynor plays more like Life, which is more gambly and risk-seeking. Cyril plays basically as robust and sturdy as possible, where he takes minimal risk.
Right, yeah.
Bane speed going next. I'm creeping, injecting everything. You could kind of grade your own macro every game when you're looking at your replays, just kind of taking a glance. Like, there's a fight now, but how are my bases behind the fight? My main base, I'm pretty happy with. I could add 1 drone. My natural's perfect. My 3rd base is perfect. And my 4th base is getting minerals for me. So I'm very happy with my base setup right now. I could be producing a little bit better throughout the fight, but I'm pretty happy with my macro setup.
You know, there's one call-out I don't think it's been mentioned this session, and Neuro, I'm sure you've mentioned it a bunch of times in your streams, but I think we get caught up as lower level, you know, sub 4.8k players with the whole supply aspect, where you hear a lot of times in commentary, pro games, high GM, that, oh, they've made 3 overlords, that's super bad, they could have got away with 2, and now that money's wasted, that could have been drones, that could have been X, that could have been Y. But, you know, there's been several times this game where you're 40-50 supply over, and you just have the ability to make whatever it is that you want, and you don't seem to be too focused on having such a tight oversupply relative to where you are.
Correct. Yeah, we make big decisions as Zerg, And it's more about the phase of the action. So the reason I made so many overlords and was kind of oversupply was because I reached my drone goal and I was done droning. So I go from a drone phase to a supply generation phase to an army production phase. That's kind of the phases of development for Zerg's macro, is you're trying to get rich so you can make stuff, and then you need to create space for the stuff, and then you build the stuff. So if you make overlords, like, you're gonna want to max out anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal.
So the only counter argument there
we
is
have someone in the wants to join.
Gotcha.
Bury lurkers.
Yeah, getting him in.
Yeah, very lurkers. Yeah.
Get him in here.
I'm just thinking the only counter argument there is if they had like a tight timing where you've now spent a bunch of money in overlords, I'm sure there's been times where you've died where you're thinking, oh shit, instead of having, 40, 50 oversupply, some of that 20, that could have been army or something, right?
Now that you mention it, I don't think that's ever happened to me.
Really? Okay.
Maybe once or twice I overlorded, but it's very rare.
A lasered, as we call it in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more common that I'm supply blocked as they're hitting and I can't make roaches and I have to make overlords. That kills me way more often.
Way more? Okay, so then I need that's a mental adjustment I need to make, because I'm probably too conservative with overlords trying to be efficient and then dying to being supply blocked as opposed to just flipping that narrative.
Yeah, you'd rather make 5 overlords and be an overlord or 2 above in supply than to undermake overlords and then lose an overlord. Because by making an overlord, you're not only generating supply, you're also mitigating the issue of maybe they snipe some overlords as they move across the map. Then you're fucked. So it's pretty good to make a couple extra ones. Like, you're not really getting punished that hard for it.
No, that's a huge takeaway for me, for sure.
So that fight there, like using banelings, is it mostly to just destroy buildings, the base, like very fast?
Yeah, let's look at how I traded it.
Not killing the army.
It doesn't really matter that much. That's one of the things that's kind of fun with Zerg, because you kind of just spam units and yeet them at stuff, and you can micro things. Let me see if I control click them.
Because here you feel like you're way far ahead, right? So just trading, right?
I have map control right now, so I'm forward. I'm just moving at them, and then
I have a question.
Yeah.
You seem to be very reluctant to do multi-prong attacks. Is that because it's bad, or do you just not favor those?
I do them. There was actually one that I did earlier in this match. I'll show you real quick. But I didn't pull my camera to it. I used the steal command to send a bunch of lings into their natural.
You split off ones into there.
Main
and natural.
The main reason that I'm not doing more multi-prong right now is because my opponent is stuck on 3 bases, so I don't really have that many other angles that I can multi-prong them from.
Yeah.
Because this map, these minerals are blocking this angle, so I can't go that way. And then this wall off is pretty sturdy, so I can't really go that way unless they make an opening. So my only real logical attacking point is the 3rd base right now. Sorry, what?
Suppose the game goes a little bit longer and into the later stages with 5th and 6th bases and such. Is that something you actively incorporate, or is it just not necessary?
Yes. So if they get the 5th and the 6th bases up here, what you're going to pivot into is Baneling run by instead of Ling run by, because that has the ability to trade well with buildings. So Banes deal bonus damage to buildings, you probably already know that, but it ends up meaning that if you yeet 25 Banes at a Nexus with all the static defense, it's going to trade amazingly well. And you can even do a follow-up push with Lings once you clear the static defense. So the idea for that, if you're really executing it well, I think the strongest way to do this is to have 2 groups. And the way that I describe this with Cyril replay is he plays a war in the north and a war in the south. He doesn't think about a main army group like little kid soccer game, like how a lot of people play StarCraft. He has 2 huge armies that are kind of working on different objectives at the same time on the map. So if I have my main army contesting here at the 3rd, I could have a backstabbing group of Lings or Ling Bane that's kind of on the left side that's going to threaten the natural wall. I would say one of the easiest ways to pick up wins against Protoss is to punish the openings in their natural wall. So I think my next fight here, I split off some lings because I have roachling. To kind of look at how I execute that. Do you all, just a real quick mechanical question, do you use the takeaway unit function?
Yes. Replace the typical setup with steal 100%.
Yeah, for everything.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's either crate or steal. There's no having a unit that can exist in multiple control groups at the same time. I feel like that's more of a Protoss and a Terran thing for Ghosts, Oracles, etc. But for Zerg, I think steal is the better alternative.
Yeah. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure that was double checked. Okay, so
I did have a. Sorry, go ahead.
This is the key moment. We see the open wall. I just put all my links in the control group into my 4 group, and I'm going to send them in while I A-move my Roach Ravager at their army, and then retreat with my army. So now I create a decision for the Protoss.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you run into your base and defend, or do you chase my Roach Ravager? Because they can't catch and kill all the Roach Ravager by the time I get home, so they want to go defend their natural, but if my roaches turn around, you see how they're in a really icky situation here.
Yes, yeah.
And then
even if they do turn their army around, you can still snipe the static at their third. Like if they sent their entire army to go and deal with the lings, then their static is left vulnerable with only warpins.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they blinked on top of my roaches, which was really bad. And then I just run away with my lings. Just try to take whatever damage points I can. Now I'm hold positioning the lings in the worker line, and then I'm pushing the third at the same time.
Artosis Pylon, thank you very much.
Yep. And then my 5th base is going down during this. My hive is going during this. I'm getting +2 ranged. One thing you could try experimenting with is just playing a bunch of Lingbane Roach Ravager and getting attack upgrades. That's pretty strong. I'm going melee 2 and range 2 at the same time.
I was going to ask you around 10-15 what warranted the decision making to just go into Banelings as opposed to saving gas for Hive Tech, but after slowing this down and looking at this, I feel like you obviously know that he's in a terrible spot. It's almost 10 minutes, he doesn't have a 4th base, and that there's no reason that he can hold like a wave of Baneling pressure after the damage he just took. So there's no need to really prioritize Hive Tech and get fancy and go T3 if you can just break them here.
Yep. Banes are just really good splash damage. One of the things that Protoss tends to have an advantage against Zerg on is just the damage output of their army, but Banelings are super high damage output, and even though they're versus light specialists, because Protoss armies naturally want to clump up, they end up getting pretty good value even against Stalkers and stuff like that. So the Banes going in here, they're getting decent trades because they're blowing up the shield batteries, they're able to hit probes, like I control click them there to send them into probes. And you can really just A-move Roach Ravager a lot. It's the kind of army that doesn't really require much babysitting, so you can just focus on your Bane control. Yep, Protoss is basically dead from here, but my follow-up transition is Ultras. I think I canceled the range upgrade and went for Carapace, so my Ultra transition will be better. But yeah, we're completely running away with the game here, mainly from dealing damage, so backstabbing the natural with Lings is very good. Trying +1 into +2 melee is really good. And then just having +1 range attack Roach Ravager 3 base as your baseline to not die to silly stuff.
2 quick questions, both related to kind of overlords and creep. One, no matter which pro or GM streamer you watch, there is always going to be some sort of non-zero percentage of overlords that are doing nothing on the map other than just sitting there, right? You've got your dead space covered, you've got your overlords ahead of the creep so you can see incoming attacks, one on their side, maybe one pooping creep, whatever. But there's never anybody who uses overlords to poop creep at the ramp between their main and their natural. Yes, some Zerg players will put a creep tumor there to connect those bases, but it seems like the poop overlord is never utilized. Obviously, maybe just a prioritization thing where it doesn't lose them enough games to justify the APM to do so.
Yeah, it used to be a thing, and I think the reason that it stopped being a thing was because the battle cruiser got buffed so much. In Heart of the Swarm, it was actually Jaedong, I think I saw him do it first, but he used to do that where he would put an overlord that was dropping creep between the main and the natural, and it's very, very good. The problem now is the BC doesn't require energy anymore. They changed some stuff so the first BC hits way earlier. So if they go for a quick 1 BC or 2 BC build and they kill that Overlord, you don't have any creep, and then your queens can't transfuse between there. So I think it was just the series of nerfs to queens and the buffs to BCs that make the Pooper Lord less good there. But it's still really good in ZvZ if you just want a little bit more quickness between your bases, or against Bioterran, that's fine. And then against Protoss, that's also fine. So yeah, if your Overlords are dropping creep, that's great.
Okay, and second question to that was, this is more specific to ZvT, and you'll have to kind of visualize this, but obviously there's times where good Terran players are incredibly active with their Hellions and scans. Even better Terran players have kept their Reaper alive so they can bounce back queens with the grenade while they're still being active with their Hellions and not missing a beat with their macro mechanics. And I never see, again, I'm going to call out pros and streamers here, where ideally you would have a Overlord ahead of your creep so you can see the angle that the Hellions are coming from. And even if your queens are slightly out of position and they kill that active creep tumor, why are we not just pooping creep with Overlords so that when we do inevitably replace that creep tumor, we're not putting it back where the creep has receded, but we can basically put it where the creep used to be, using the Pooper Lord to basically act as a bridge between, right? Because otherwise that creep would recede from where that active creep used to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say it's a valid move, but as soon as one Viking enters the equation, it becomes untenable. Because queens can't really maneuver against it off creep. Like, yeah, they have that one Overlord where they could stand, but as soon as the Overlord moves, they can't transfuse each other anymore. So the Viking can mess that up. It's not bad though. Like, I meme about it and I call it the poop bandits, where I have 4 queens on a plane and they go around and drop creep. It's very funny, and I would say just mixing it in as a way to work on your multitasking and your mechanics for Overlord drop management and queens is fun and good. But yeah, drop Overlords for creep. You can use the same idea, can be applied to nidus networks, where you nidus somewhere kind of forward for yourself. You either exit queens from that spot or you walk queens there and you creep around the nidus. I'll do that really often against mech players. So remember I was talking about the psychology nidus before. If you psychology nidus their 5th base locations, you exit queens from there, drop 4 creep tumors. That's like a minute delay on each of those cases at least.
Yeah, and to be clear, I wasn't saying like only use the Dropper Lord or the Pooper Lord rather as a replacement for the creep tumor, but just as a bridge so that you don't have to place the replacement creep tumor further back or at the same position that it used to be. Instead, you can use the Pooper Lord to kind of place it either where it used to be or even further ahead than it used to be. So you're not losing any ground with creep. And I don't see that utilized, and oftentimes the Viking play is deemed as greedy in pro play, so it's often not there and there's nothing to punish it. But I've never seen, after a decade plus, anybody make that adjustment to try to just leverage Pooper Lords more. So I don't know, maybe we'll...
You don't have Lair during that time, during the Hellion and the Reaper thing, so I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm talking at about the point that you do like 5 minutes. Like if your lair starting at 4:30 as standard, then like it's.
I feel like they can shoot the Overlord and then you lose.
At that point, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So I don't think it's viable.
Yeah, it depends. Like Overlord creep drop is something that is underutilized in the same category as Burrow. These are kind of higher effort mechanics, you could call them, where technically, yes, it is granting you advantages, and technically, yes, you can do that. But you want to think about the APM investment of whatever you're doing. And one of the strongest ways you can take trades with your opponent is actually an APM trade. I think, whose game was it? Was it Sugar Cold's game, where he walked the 4 lings into the base?
Yes.
That, I would say, can end up being a positive APM trade, even if you have a negative value trade, because you can get the Protoss player to be flustered and over-clicking to try to defend something where you just clicked 4 lings into their base one time. So that would be a really, really good trade that you could do for yourself, or even just running your army toward the opponent and then running away. That can cause them to reposition. That's one of the ways that I win a lot of ZvZs with Roach Ravager, is I'll run my Roach Ravager toward their 3rd, and then I'll run it toward their natural, like where I know they can see me. I'll run towards their natural, their 3rd, their natural, their 3rd, their natural, then go. And I'll just run back and forth a few times just to stress them out and to make their APM happen on my terms to the point that they get tired of following me around and they have the chance to make a mistake. All the opponents that you're going to face are going to make lots of mistakes, lots of silly mistakes. So you want to focus on having better fundamentals and finding ways to apply pressure to them, both strategically, also positionally, and then also with your tech. So you want to make sure you always have another tech piece that's cooking up. You want to make sure that you always have an idea of how many bases they have, and you have ways to threaten them on the map, either by backstabbing if they move out, or just by going across and killing them because you're ahead.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
I've only got one last question before we run out of time here. I don't know if we're close to the timer, but I wanted to ask about kind of equivalent actions that Zerg can do, whether they're low APM or high APM, as, I guess, distractions to get your opponent to look at X while your main army is at location Y. And obviously Terran can utilize things like shift-clicking a Liberator. Protoss can use things like shift-clicking Zealots or a single DT that wreaks havoc and forces you to look and respond. Otherwise, you'll lose the entire drone line. And yes, so outside of Ling run by or like a 4 Baneling run by, a 4 Baneling drop, what are some of the typical things that you find yourself using that you would suggest or want to highlight for other Zerg players that can, you know, do equivalent?
Late game nidus is criminally underutilized. Nidusing the main is something that Terrans hate. Like one thing that I would recommend, if you ever want to like lurk some Terran or Protoss streams, you can kind of do reverse study of listen to the stuff that they whine about the most, because that's a clue for what the strongest moves that we have are. If you nidus lurkers in their main, whether it's a Terran or a Protoss, they are now having a very bad day. A lot of Zergs aren't thinking about hitting them in the back like that, but that's the equivalent move of them having a prism full of DTs in the main. That can be a huge threat, especially if your army is out on the map. So same thing for them. Once you've checked off all your boxes of, I have my 4 to 5 base convergence point, I have a big drone count, I'm working on tech, I have a strong army, but I don't think I can A-move and kill them. Just mixing in the nidus network makes you dangerous everywhere on the map suddenly, when before you were only dangerous in the frontal attack lanes.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's a good one.
I think also like nidus got like cheaper, so I feel like always the nidus is so expensive because I can't remember what it cost before, like 100. No, I can't remember. It was like expensive, like to throw down a nidus. Now I feel like it's way more cheaper. You can just throw it down.
Well, it's come full circle. It used to be 200 to 50-50. Now I think it's 100. So
yeah.
Yep, nidus is super, super good, very underutilized. Burrowing Lings at outer bases is another really good delay that usually takes a lot of time for people to figure out. Another one is hold positioning the Lings at key bases. I'm just going to put that in the macro cycle here. Hold position Lings at base locations. Take watchtowers. Cool. Macro cycles.
You actually just reminded me with that macro cycle. I lied. One more question is, if you were to extrapolate that macro cycle beyond what I would consider like the fundamentals, like 1 through 5, right? Inject supplies, spend larva, creep, scout. At what point does, I guess, like the distraction come in? Check on your army, check on upgrades. Like, is that before you're holding positions at base locations and take watchtowers, like at some point, or is like, where do you prioritize, like, again, upgrades in this macro cycle to check on upgrades, or are you just listening for the voice prompt to say upgrades complete?
I would put it right next to creep. I'm gonna actually put it as 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that feels good, because you do want to make sure, like, if you have an evo chamber, it should be cooking up something. Maybe even putting that above creep. I would say they're kind of similar, because having more creep out by a base, like in your game, you had so much creep in that whole area that you basically added 4 minutes of time for yourself before they were actually able to kill you. So focusing on creep over an upgrade isn't really going to punish you that hard, but yeah, if you are not getting upgrades for a long period of time, it doesn't punish you at the start, but if they consistently get upgrades, you're going to end up falling really far behind for 3-3, and then they can just aim, move, and kill you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Well, cool. Drone a lot. Saturate your bases for minerals aggressively. Check people's wall-offs. You're all going to be against F2 gamers almost every game. So Lings being yeeted into the natural whenever stuff is getting wild is very, very strong. And then are there any things that specifically tilt you aside from mech, kind of as we round out here?
BCs and the amount of queens you have to have.
BCs and the queen count.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I know there's BC coming. I was like, they're sitting there. And I was like, all right, I have 7 queens. It should be enough. And then there's just like a good spot of like, that you're like going between bases. And you're just like, I don't want to.
I will say that I do think if it's a single BC, Zerg players across all levels often forget that queens outrange BCs, and you can actually kite them for affinity if you're on creep.
Really?
Yes.
Yep. That's true. I also added here in the Q&A versus BC, try putting 3 spores in the main. This also applies versus Skytoss as well. If they're going for Mass Void Ray or Mass Carrier. It was actually Elazer who was watching my stream, and he was watching me die to Mass Void Ray. And he was like, yeah, just put 3 spores in the main with 1 queen injecting there, and then you can just focus all your other queens to protect your natural 3rd and 4th. It simplifies the game for you a lot, and I recommend 3 spores in the main also against YOLO bio players. A lot of bio players, they will shift Q, drop their stuff directly into your base, and there's usually one like wide and long cliff in your main. If you put 2 spores on that spot and then 1 spore on the other kind of triangle of your main base, they will just yeet medivacs into you, and 3 spores will kill them before they can unload. So
I actually can't remember if it was you, Neuro, or Lambo who I picked this up from. It was years ago now, and I've been winning games with it ever since. But my first 4 Hydras, irrespective of whether they have a single upgrade finished or not, the first 4 Hydras are set to patrol off hotkey in the corner of the map, not at the edge so that they can see it if they boost in, but in a position just ever so recessed back so that when they boost in, 4 Hydras can snap a single medevac. It won't stop 2, but it will snap 1 with spore support.
Oh, that's cool.
And so the first 4 Hydras are just forgotten about as if they do not exist, and if you're a Zerg who has disciplined yourself to not use F2, those 4 Hydras basically sit there until the drop Terran stops dropping you.
Yeah, that's...
Did you say, like, not on the edge? Just, like, a little bit in?
Yeah, slightly in so they don't have the vision of your Hydras whenever they're trying to get in.
Correct. And it works versus Protoss Prism as well.
Yeah.
Yep. You can... normally it would be 3 Hydras versus Prism, but 4 is not going to hurt you. It's still good. Yeah, that's a good move. It's funny because they added a Hydra unburrow speed buff because I think that they thought that we would burrow Hydras in our main to do that, but no one has ever done that, so...
Surprise!
Surprise, I have 3 Hydras that live here.
Unburrow?
Yes, Hydra Unburrow. There was a patch where they lowered the speed of that, which no one has used since then. So if you want to mix it in, they would never suspect it.
Sorry, was that... Are you sure you're not talking about... Was it random delay just to change so that they don't all pop up at the same time? Or was it specifically Unburrow?
I think it was Hydra Unburrow speed.
Okay.
Because I feel like they were slow before. Like, they just, like...
They were,
a little bit. She was like... Pop, 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 pop.
Unburrow random delay decrease. Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
I have a question about lurkers and burrow. I see, like, when lurkers are in your... like ball of army kind of. I see like people box the whole army on like small bits and then burrow. I don't know if they have a different hotkey of just burrowing, because if you box through your army with lurkers and other armies, they all burrow, right? So do you want to like you don't want the whole army to burrow, so is it just having a hotkey just for the lurkers and burrow?
Lurker should always be in a separate hotkey from the main army.
Yeah, because the problem, like, if you want to manually like burrow like not at the same time, just like few times at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is like a bit problematic because you have to like manually click them or select them in case they're like very bunched up into your other army.
Yeah, the kind of general thought process for using lurkers for an attack is similar to siege tanks, where you want to set them outside the base to where maybe one or two of the lurkers can just barely hit their buildings. And that'll piss them off and make them feel like they need to clear it. If you shove them in too far, then sometimes your army will just get killed because you're like moving into them while they're attacking you. But if you, kind of like a Terran does, you establish outside of their static defense just by a little bit, and then you scoot up with your army and just attack them a couple times, they'll usually come out and fight you, or you can gradually just kind of start leapfrogging lurkers closer and closer to apply that pressure to them. But yeah, lurkers should always be on a separate key. And as soon as you see them going for something like disruptors or mass siege tanks or whatever, you want to kind of split your lurkers up. So that's a good time to nidus some of the lurkers in the main, or just set some of the lurkers at their future bases to delay bases. You can kind of use them like burrowed lings in that sense. But strangling your opponent's 4th and 5th base timings will take you guys really far, because most people, even like in my games, they're just sending workers out to take bases with no escort. So if you have anything there that delays them at all, that's going to give you a really big macro edge.
Cool. One quick one here is just, what would you say are the top like 1 or 2 key points that you find yourself deferring to, you know, given the whole mastery is a path, when you get hard stuck at an MMR, whether it's 3K, 4K, 5K, whatever, you know, is it replay analysis? Is it trying to find the trends in, like, the one trend in all of your game, not specific to a certain race? Like, for example, if you're getting supply blocked at, I don't know, 54 supply at all races, like, what kind of dictates what you're working on when you find yourself hard stuck at a certain MMR range?
Yeah, your skill in StarCraft is like the ship that you are navigating on the seas of the ladder. And every time you take damage, it is pointing to a leak in your boat. And the way that you want to really improve in a methodical and really strict way is every time there's a leak in the boat, you write it down and you plug it. And you expect to need to work on making sure that it's plugged over time. And you want to figure out where your biggest leaks are and work at those first. And the way that I recommend doing that is when you go into your own replay, go until you get to the first macro mistake. Maybe that's a supply block. Maybe that's your ling speed being late. You need to make sure that that is ironed out and fixed so that it never happens again. Because a lot of the things that separate 6K players from 5K players is they just don't make a lot of those early game fumbles. Like, I'm more likely to get supply blocked than Cyril is because he's just memorized and played perfectly that early game scenario so many times. So you need to find out what yours are. Is your ling speed late? Are you floating gas? Is your third base late? And if you're having a C game day, like you're tired, just focus on a really simple goal. Like, I'm just spreading creep today, or I'm just injecting today. Because if you go really hard for some of the fundamentals for a certain session, then when you go to a normal ladder game where you're just trying to win only, then you're naturally going to have better creep and better injects because you put in those hours of practice. The main thing that I think gets people stuck is they feel like they're stuck because of the game and not because of themselves. You have to be sweatier than people at your bracket to pass them. You have to be doing something that they're not doing. And the main ways that I got GM the first time, even though I never played StarCraft 1 and I was bronze in Wings of Liberty, was I accepted every defeat as me getting outplayed, which most Masters players, they weren't able to do. And then I also took notes as to why I lost. And then the trick for getting a super sick ZvZ win rate is if there's an all-in or a cheese that kills you, just spam it a bunch and then see what other people do against it. And either you win a whole bunch with it, or you get to see the defensive procedure for yourself. I'll never forget it was 15 pool, 15 gas, 15 hatch. It was a ling all-in back in Heart of the Swarm. And it's just lings only, 2 queens injecting, and you only have 16 drones. And it's super all-in, but if you don't have Banes in time, and you don't have a spine or a wall, and you don't put 2 queens on the ramp, you instantly die. And I remember people spamming this build against me, and this was before I was a streamer. If they did that build to me, I would say fuck you, because you don't get a macro game, and it's really frustrating. They're just spamming one unit at me, and I would get pissed, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do this build. And I did that build, and I went from being platinum all the way up to diamond, and I was like, this is such a free build, it's so good. And then I queued into Masters Zergs, and they had a spine and 2 queens of the ramp, and I got no damage at all, and I felt like a clown. So I was like, oh, that's how you beat it. So I would basically navigate ZvZ that way of, if they do some silly cheese to me, and I don't know what to do against it, I'll just do that build, and then wait for a Masters player to just school me and shut it down completely. And then I look at the replay and I say, oh, this is how I beat that. So climbing the ladder is all about iterating on the situations you're failing in, and really looking hard at the situations that upset you the most and trying to fix them. A lot of people, they get mad because they want to have the ideal macro game that goes according to their plans, but the ladder is anything but that. They want to put you in the most uncomfortable, gross situation possible. So you need to be able to climb out of those gross and weird situations and get to your hatch setup that you want. And that's why I highly recommend doing the macro warm-up before you play. Play versus an AI one time, hit 200 supply, make sure your injects are good, make sure your spore timings and your gas timings are good before you get harassed, and then maybe play a couple unranked games and then hit ranked. Because if you're not getting your good night's rest and you're not warming up properly, you're setting yourself up to behave basically the same as all other players at your bracket, and you're just gonna have the same MMR.
Yeah, just a quick statement or comment here, not even a question, but one of the things that you had highlighted here, you even put it in purple in the ZvP notes, was the best time to trade is at, or one of the best times to trade is at 170 supply. A mistake I was making, at least in ZvP specifically, was waiting until I was maxed out before trading, thinking that that was the Zerg way, and you've heard a lot of commentators or streamers say this, but specifically in ZvP, sometimes that extra 30 supply is what the Protoss needs for them to finish researching Storm or another critical upgrade, and hitting at 170, it's just awkward for them. I'm not sure if this holds true, Neuro, maybe you can comment on this, against ZvZ and ZvT, but I know specifically versus ZvZ, my win rate has shot up drastically by trading at 170 or 180 as like the trigger for when you need to just pull the trigger and go, versus waiting until you're fully maxed out.
Yeah, you don't need 200 exactly. With ZvP, I don't like waiting to 200 because of what you just mentioned of Storm, or it could be a critical mass of Colossi or Disruptors, but the thing is they get AoE at some point. So if you can hit with a +1, either melee or ranged, before they have AoE, you're going to fare much better against them for sure. And then, yeah, if you're thinking about just the way to prioritize, how am I creating a win condition for myself, you're kind of looking for either I'm overwhelming their army with force, or I'm wounding their income to the point that they can't sustain their action against me. And making sure that you have another like steal group of lings. I feel like stealing lings to backstab is one of those hidden tricks that's going to punish every person who leaves their wall open, and Terrans and Protoss are doing that very often. Going back to your ZvZ comment about when to attack, +2/+1 ranged with Roach Ravager is probably the biggest power spike that we have that's the most obvious. So even if you're not at 200 supply, if you have +2/+1 and the opponent does not, you can oftentimes win fights with fewer roaches just because those upgrades are so good. But the GM Zergs I've talked to, back when Zerg used to be more common in GM, would say that throughout Ling Bane fights and Ling Roach fights and Roach fights later on, the player who injects through the fight oftentimes ends up winning, even if they didn't micro as well. So think about injecting before you trade units, like taking a breath before you're about to swim in the pool, like, and you have to turn and breathe between your strokes if you're doing crawl stroke. We need to inject before we trade units, otherwise we run out of momentum. Inject those bases. Well, awesome. I think everyone has the notes here. I put it in the chat, I think. Cool. If y'all have any other questions, feel free to message me on Discord or in stream. I'm here to help. Thanks, DeVoid, for putting this on. This was really fun.
When is the ZvZ coaching session so we can all have a 71+% win percentage in mirror matchups?
I don't know. Talk to Turtle Darren.
I will. I definitely will.
Well, this is really cool. Thanks for all being brave and showing your replays.
Yeah, GG's.
Hell yeah. Take care, y'all. And remember,